Welcome to the beginning of my React Native web series. In this series, we're going to be building out a workout app. Specifically, we're going to be modeling it after this program called StrongLifts. They have an app, and we're going to be implementing some of the functionality for this app. Specifically, we're going to go over keeping track of your workout and then the history of your workout and have an app that does that. Now we're going to be building this with React Native Web. So what this means is at the end of this, we should have not only a website, but also an iOS and Android app that does it for us. And we should only be having one code base, or at least the majority of it's going to be a single code base. Now here are the other things that we're going to be using to build out this app. Secondly, we're going to be using Mobx for state management. And then pairing with that, we're going to be using TypeScript as the programming language. We're going to be using React navigation to be able to change pages in both the app or change pages in the website. And we're going to be using React hooks for the entire thing. And then we're going to be just working with the front end for this. And so we're going to be storing data in local storage or async storage on the phone. So that way we can persist the workout data as the user uses the app or uses the website and doesn't lose it after they come back to it. All right, so in this video, we're going to set up our React Native web project. Now to do this, you can do kind of a multitude of boilerplates, but I'm going to be doing create React app to start off with. And then we're going to be, you're free to choose a different one if you want to. And then we're going to be possibly using our own Webpack config later if we need to change some of the config. And then we're going to basically just be going through the client-side rendering portion of the React Native web app README for now. So I went ahead and already set up the React Native or the Create React App project right here. So if you want to do the same, you just go and run yarn create and you run React App and then whatever you want to name it. And then I did -- TypeScript to make this a TypeScript project. And then after that, we should see some TypeScript files in the source. And I just have this open in VS Code right now. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add React Native to this project. So I'm going to say yarn add, and I'm going to install React Native Web, and then this package called React Art, which React Native Web needs. Now I'm trying something new for this series. You'll notice I have versions at the end of all of these. The reason for that is I'm going to be trying these exact versions so you can follow along with me, and hopefully as the series progresses, there won't be any changes with you installing a later version of the package. Also, the other thing, you're going to want to make sure you install React Native 0.55 because if we take a look at the React Native web documentation, it's compatible with that version and not higher. So we'll go ahead and install these three packages, and then we're going to install the types for React Native. That way we have type definitions when we use TypeScript with it. So we're going to say yarn add as a dev dependency, and we're going to be adding React Native, and I can just bring that up so you can see it better. And again, I'm installing the types at version 0.55 just so it matches up. So after we have installed those things, we're ready to basically take out some things from the Create React app, which we just do not need. So for example, we do not need the SVG, index.css, app, or app test, or apps.css. So I'm just going to go ahead and just delete those now. And then in the index.tsx file, I'm going to go ahead and delete this line right here. And then we're going to paste in this client-side rendering code right here. And so now we're just going to remove this React DOM.render. Instead of us saying React DOM.render, we're just going to be using this app register. Now notice ours is called root here. This get element by ID, so we're just going to rename this to root right here as well. And the way that we're going to go throughout this series is I think we're going to build out React Native Web, or at least the website, and then at the end we'll get it working with the app, or maybe in the middle we'll spin up also the app and make sure that is working. But we're going to primarily develop this from the website point of view. And basically the process of doing this is we're actually going to just be writing all our code using React Native import. So you'll notice we've imported from React Native here. We're going to be importing from React Native the entire time through our code. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and it's going to remove those dead imports at the top. I have it so a VS Code setting, so it does that for me. If you want to turn that on, you can go to Preferences, Settings, and if you come click on the brackets over here, you can see the bracket versions of your settings, and I believe one of them I have Organize Imports. Yeah, so this editor.code actions on save, I have it automatically running Organize Imports. So you're going to see that throughout the series happening. So now that we have this initialized in our index.tsx, we want to just go into our app itself and convert it to using React components or React Native components. So that's just app.tsx right over here. And we're not going to be using classes. We're going to be using function components and hooks. So I'm going to say const app, and here we're just going to say return. And also the other thing I want to mention is probably throughout this I'm going to be using some different shortcuts. So I'm going to be posting my VS Code settings below if you want to get these as well. So one of them I have is called RNSS. So this is going to create style sheets for me. So we're going to be using style sheets from React Native to do this. So these are little snippets. And also I have RH for React Hook. And so this is going to spit out a snippet that looks like this. And so here I can say the name of my component app, and this one doesn't take any props, so I can just say it like that, and now I can put whatever stuff I want here. Anyway, I'm gonna delete all this stuff. We don't need any of that code right there, and I can get rid of all this stuff here, and basically we can empty the file and just have this, and we don't need to export this. So now we're gonna actually be using React Native components here. So I'm gonna say view, and then we're going to say text, and we're going to say hello from React Native Web. And of course we need to import all these, and I just hit command and then period. This is another one you're going to see me do throughout the series to import things. I can either import just this view or import all missing imports. The other thing you'll see me do is if I have my cursor here, I can hit command and space to autocomplete, get this menu up. Both of those I'm going to be constantly doing throughout the series, so it's good to add those to your repertoire as well. And yeah, the text we want to also import. I just did command period, and it doesn't look like it's letting me import it, so usually I'll hit command space control space, and I'll bring it up, and you can see I want to auto import from React Native. We'll hit enter. Alright, so this is what the start of our application is going to look like. If I come back over here, we need to start the server up. Say yarn start, and then when this boots up, we can go to localhost 3000, and it's going to actually render the view and the text. And so the thing with create React app is underneath the hood, what it's going to do is it's going to change React Native to React Native Web, and it's going to be using those components, and then React Native Web turns the view component into divs. And I guess the text component maybe also into divs, but anyway, we can see the text right here show up. We can even inspect this and see what the heck it created for us. You'll notice with React Native Web, it spits out a whole bunch of classes for us. That's an interesting thing I noticed, but anyway, that's kind of your introduction to React Native Web of how to set it up. Recap of what we did is we installed 3 packages, React Art, React Native, and React Native Web. And then inside our index.tx, we initialized our app using this bit of code that we got from the README instead of the React DOM. And then in our app, we're just going to go ahead and continue to flush out this thing using React Native components. So before we go any farther, I want to make sure we can get React Native set up with React hooks. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. And to start off with, we're going to be using the React Native CLI. Now usually when I start a React Native project, I'll usually opt for Expo just because the development experience is a lot better and you can start up the emulator and build the application a lot faster. But as of today or currently, they do not support React hooks, at least I don't believe they do. So we're just going to be using the React Native CLI for this. So to do so, we are going to first install it, and we're going to install it globally by running this command, npm-i-g, and I already have it installed globally, so I'm just going to interrupt it. Next thing we're going to do is run the CLI to create a project in React Native. So we're building the project in TypeScript. So we're going to follow this guide right here. And we're just going to run this command right here. And I've already done this, initialized a my awesome project. And that's what I have open in VS Code right here. So after that, the first thing I'm going to do is if we look at our package.json, you'll notice that they have two dependencies, React and React Native. So we want to set up hooks in this project. So we're going to need the latest version of React, or at least React 16.8. And then for React Native, we're going to need version 59 to work. So we're going to install both of those. So we're going to say npm I and install React at version 16.8.2 and React Native at 0.59. And this is currently a release candidate, so that's why there's this -rc. So we're going to go ahead and install that. And then especially with React Native, you might have saw or I mentioned in the last video that with React Native Web, it's only compatible with 0.55. And we're currently we just installed 5.9 to use in this particular project. So this is what I'm going to attempt, and we'll see how well it works, is I'm going to be using 5.9 in the React Native project, this one, and then our web project, we're going to be sharing the same components, but we'll see if we can get it working. The components, even though we're going to try not to rely on any React Native 5.9 features that would break the React Native web project, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so we got this installed. So we can go to the app.tsx. So this is what's currently being rendered. If we were to start the app right now, I'm going to just delete the app.js because we do not need it. If you click on it, you'll notice it has the Flow version if you want to use Flow, but we're going to be using TypeScript. All right, so we're just going to write out a simple hook to make sure this works. So I'm going to say down here, just export default app, and then I'm going to convert this into a function. So I'm going to say const app, and then this is going to just return, and then I'm going to just copy the view. And then we're going to just say const use state, and we're just going to create a little counter to make sure it works. So here I'm going to say count and set count. And then here I'm going to display the current value of count. And then below that, we're going to render a React Native button. We're going to say increment. And then whenever you press this, we're just going to say set count is equal to count plus 1. And we're going to give that a save. We don't really need the props here. And now if we go to our package.json, we want to run this project. So we can start the CLI or the packager by running yarn start or npm start. The next thing that we have to do is actually start the emulator itself. So I'm going to be running the iOS emulator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say iOS here, and I'm going to say React Native run iOS. Now for those of you that are on a Windows computer, you're going to need to use Android, and you're going to need to have Android Studio installed and have an emulator created. And when you have both those things, you can create an Android script here, and you just say run Android. You want to make sure, I believe your Android emulator needs to be running when you run this command, but if for the iOS one, it'll automatically start it up for you. So we're going to say npm run iOS. And just a heads up, this will probably take a few minutes to actually build this on the emulator and get it all working. And then we'll see our application and make sure it works. So mine finished building, and I can see the app starting up here. Now, if you don't see it started up, what should happen is if you go to just the screen with all the apps, there should be a new icon, and it should say My Awesome Project or whatever you named your project. And you can just open that up to see it. So if we go ahead and click this, we can see it's incrementing the state. So hooks are indeed working with React Native right now. So where we're going to go from here is we can now have our React Native project set up, and we also have our React project set up. So the next thing is we're going to set up a Monorepo. So that way we can create basically that one code base that we're sharing with our React Native setup and with our React setup. And basically that one module or package that we're going to share between both of them, and we'll set that up. So we are now going to set up a monorepo, and the reason we are doing this is so it's easy to share the code between the React and the React Native project that we set up already. Now I just did a step before I started this video. I created a folder which I just called my monorepo, and then I took the two folders or projects that we worked on in the last two videos and put them in here. So I copied the My Awesome project into this folder, and I also copied the React Native web series. And this React Native web series is just what I called the project that we created with Create React App. So I'm going to be starting from here, and the first thing that we're going to do is set up Yarn Workspaces. So in my monorepo, once you have these copied over, we're going to create a folder called Packages, and then I'm going to rename my awesome project to App, and that's where the React Native code's going to go. And then I'm going to rename this to Web, and I'm going to put that in Packages. So here's what our file structure looks like right now. And then next, I'm going to say npm i-y, or a init/y, to initialize a repo here, or a package.json, I mean. And then to actually make it into a Yarn workspace, we need to say at the top here, private is equal to true. And we're going to say, I'll just add this at the bottom, workspaces. And then here's where we specify what our workspaces are. We're going to say packages/star. So what that means is any thing that we add in the packages folder is going to be considered a package that Yarn Workspaces are going to see and be able to do stuff with. So now if I were to run Yarn right now, it should install all the dev dependencies for everything. And I'm just going to real quickly just remove, oh perfect, I already have this up, all the node modules and all these packages. So remove it in app and remove it in web. And I can do it with this command. So I'm saying remove rf packages, and then I'm saying doesn't matter what package. You can do that with the star command, and then remove node modules. You could also just go into each package and remove it. There's only 2 right now. That's a little shortcut for you. All right, so I deleted that. I'm just gonna go ahead and run yarn, and I'll let this run in the background because it's gonna probably take a few minutes to like install that stuff. So next thing that we're going to do is we're gonna create a new folder which we're gonna call common. So common is basically where we're going to be developing stuff most of the time. So this is where the one code base is going to live, and then both the app and the web are going to use this one code base. So I'm going to go inside of packages common, and we're going to just initialize this with a package.json as well. Now I'm going to give this a, let's refresh, there we go. I'm going to give this a name. I'm just going to call mine wow. So whenever you deal with Yarn Workspaces or monorepos in general, usually you'll have the name of your monorepo, and you'll say at the name of your monorepo / the name of the individual package. In this case, I'm just naming my monorepo wow, and that's what I'm going to put here. Next up, we're going to create a source folder, and inside of there, I'm going to say index.tsx. And here I'm just going to paste just a demo app, the one that we created. So if I go to app.tsx, I'm just going to copy the app that we created. So copy this, paste it in, and of course we need to install React and React Native and stuff in here. So let me just make sure this is finished running. It is. Cool. So in here I'm going to say yarn add. We're going to add React Native and React. And we're going to add React at 16.8.2. All right, so when that is done, we're then going to install the dev dependencies for React Native, and then we're also going to install the TypeScript. And then we're going to have to add a tsconfig to this. So let's do that. And I am installing this as TypeScript 3.3.3, and then this is just the latest types for React Native. Even though we are using a later version of React Native itself, this is kind of the latest types. All right, so now we can say here, I can just import this all from React Native or whatnot. It's taking a second to load. Instead of me manually importing this, I'm gonna just give it a second, and we're gonna create a tsconfig. All right, so in our tsconfig, I'm just gonna copy what we have in the web. and then we're going to make a few changes. So for this, we're going to say allow.js. We're going to remove that. We don't want to allow.js. And instead of isolated modules, we're going to say declaration is true. And when we set declaration as true, we build the module. What's going to happen is it's going to have TypeScript declaration files in it, which is what we want. And here we're going to say JSX is going to be React, and then no omit. I'm going to get rid of that. And then module, I believe we need to change this to common.js. And then I'm going to say an out directory, I'm going to say is dist. And I believe that's all the changes that we need to make to this file. But when we build a project and then try to use it, we'll see if we have any problems. All right, so this should be good loading. It is, so I'm just going to say command period and import everything in. And it looks like text didn't get imported for some reason, so control space, and we'll import that. And did style sheet get added? Nope, there we go. Instead of export default, I'm just going to export it like that. And that looks pretty good. In the package.json, we are going to say TSC, and I'm going to rename this to build. And what this does is this runs the TypeScript compiler, and it's going to compile our code. So if I come here, say yarn build, and it's going to look in the source folder, build it, and we can see the dist. So a couple things, if you know this worked correctly, is in your dist folder, you should see an index.d.ts. Should just look like this, I guess. And then in your index.js, it should look like this. And you'll notice that there's not JSX in here, right? So it does not look like this where there's brackets and stuff. That's JSX. It looks like this, and we're saying create element in here. So that's important. Yep, so that is pretty much all we need to do in common, I believe. So next we want to basically use this code base in both of these projects. So today we're going to start by adding it to the web. So to do that, we're going to head over to the web's package.json, and we need to first add the common package as a dependency. So I usually just come in here and I say wow/common, and then we're going to set the version of it. And if we come to common package.json, it'll tell us the version is just 1.0. Oh, that's the wrong one. So we're going to put that there. And then after we add that, we just need to say yarn. So we're going to cd over to the web, and that's just going to add this common package in here. And now if I go to my app.tsx, instead of just saying hello from React Native Web, what I'm going to do is delete this app, and I'm just going to export the app which we get from that package, which we said is wow/common. All right, and let's see if currently cannot find it. I'm not sure. I just hit command and then P, or if you do command capital P, it'll open this little window. I'm going to restart the TypeScript server to see if it actually can find the module. The other thing you can do to double check is if I do an ls node modules, I'm able to see whether or not it was added, and we can see at wow is not there, so that means it didn't get added for some reason. So I either messed something up or it didn't get added for whatever reason. So I'm just going to say yarn again, or you know what? I'm just going to remove the node modules altogether and just have yarn run again and see if it gets added this time. Oh, you know what? We forgot one important step. That's why it's not working. So if we go back to our common package.json, if we look at this main, we need to specify where the main file is. So for us, it's going to be inside of dist and then index.js. So let's add that real quick. All right, so now we're going to just, I don't know if we need to re-yarn. If I go back to the app, oh, cool. So you notice how it just went from red to orange. I don't know if you're watching right there. It also is no longer an error here, so it was able to find this file now. So we're going to say yarn start, and we're going to get this error about skip pre-flight check, or that we did some things wrong, and it's going to tell us some things are wrong. Basically, we're trying to access a module outside, and maybe we're doing some other stuff wrong. But we can just add this skip pre-flight check to the beginning, and everything will work. So let's go ahead and do that. So skip pre-flight check is true. Now for those of you guys that are on Windows, to get this to work, we can add cross-env in front of this. So I'm now going to add cross-env as well, and it doesn't matter what version of cross-env you get, it should probably work. And that just makes this work on Windows. Alright, so let's do yarn start again. And if this works correctly, what happens when this starts up is we should see this little app counter that we have, where we can click on it and it's going to increment the count using hooks in our website. So it looks like no crashes. Come over here, we see our little welcome to React Native. We can increment, and that's our hooks working. So awesome. So what we just set up is a common package, which we are now using in the website. So getting this to work with React Native is also a little tricky. So that's what we're going to save till the next video. And so we're going to import basically this common package, or get the common package working with the app as well. And so what's going to happen is in the future, we're just going to be coding in this common folder, and then both the web and the app is going to get this code and should basically be building the app and the website in parallel. Now I just want to go over real quick a few things that is important about what we set up, because this can be kind of tricky to get working. So if it is not working for you, these are the few things that you want to check. So you notice I was coming over here and I was saying ls node modules and couldn't find it. I think what I was doing wrong about that is, one, it should be in the root folder, and there it is. So if I do ls ... in the root directory or the root monorepo, we can see the wow folder, and we can see common. So that is important to be able to see. So the thing is, again, this was important. We missed this at first. You want to make sure that you have index, or this dist, this main is pointing at an actual file that exists, and that's pointing at dist/index.js. One other thing I want to add real quick is I'm going to add this thing called rimraf. So this is going to delete the build folder, or this dist folder, every time we build. That way we don't have stale data in there. So I'm going to say rimraf dist, and we're going to build. Okay, so I'm going to cd back over to common, and yarn add as a dev dependency rimraf, and this doesn't really matter what version either. And so what that's going to do is it's just going to delete the folder, and then it's going to build it each time. And if we do yarn build, nothing will really change, but that just helps get consistent builds. Sometimes I get funky stuff when I don't do that. The other thing is with the tsconfig, is there's a couple important things. Make sure the JSX is set to React. Make sure that the module is common.js. And the last one is declaration is set to true. And so when you build stuff, you get a nice dist that has the right output that we want. And notice we're saying include source here. That's how we know it knows to build the source folder right there as well. And that's pretty much the key parts of getting this to work, I think. And then after that, we just add, of course, this to our package.json, the wow package, or the common wow package. We're going to use this common package that we created and use it in our app package, which is based on React Native. Now, getting yarn workspaces and importing from our workspaces is actually a little tricky with React Native, and we're going to see why that is in a couple minutes as we kind of run into some of these issues, and we'll deal with some of the workarounds to get it to work. So to start off, though, we are going to just install or add the dependency to our package.json in our React Native project. So I'm going to say @wow/common. That's just what I named it, and I'm going to put version 0 here. And then I can go to I'm already in the packages app right here, and I have yarn to install that. After that, in the app.tsx, I'm going to just replace all this code that we have here with the app. So I'm going to delete this, delete this, delete this, and then the app is going to be coming from that common package. And then here, if I just say app, we can have this is what we want to render. Now, if we tried just starting up the application right now, we'd actually get an error. We can try that if we want. So we can say yarn start, and it's going to say cannot find module. Now, if we go to our package.json, we can see why that is. So it's trying to start the React Native CLI, and you'll notice the path it's looking for. Node modules, and then the React Native one. And if we just do an ls to see if that exists, React Native, we'll actually see that the file does not exist, or the directory does not exist. And the reason for that is we're using a Yarn workspace. And so how Yarn workspaces work is they hoist up the modules. So what that means is it's actually sitting in our root directory. So if we do an ls and we go up 2 directories into that node modules, and we look for the React Native package, you'll notice we will find it. That's because it was hoisted up. So we can avoid this problem because we basically want it in this current directory. We could lift it up if we wanted to, but I'm going to say no hoist. So this is a trick that you can use with Yarn workspaces. And how it works is we can specify either in the root directory, we could use that, or in the child directory, which we're going to be using, no hoist on the React Native package. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in my dev dependencies, or sorry, not my dev dependencies, but in the package.json at the bottom. And I'll link a link to this article. This kind of goes more in depth about how no hoist works. But basically what's going to happen is the React Native dependency, instead of being in the root node modules, it's going to come down to the node modules that is in the app. Now, whenever I add a change like that, like I just added the no hoist option here, I like to just destroy the node modules and reinstall them because usually stuff gets messed up in the middle. Also, I just saw this was being unsaved. I'm just going to save all right there. All right, so I'm going to do remove, and I'm going to remove RF, both the node modules that's in this current directory and also just the root as well, just to be safe. Sometimes stuff gets messed up. Now, the next problem we're going to hit is after we get this, it's going to be able to start up okay. But what happens with Yarn workspaces is to be able to access this common package and to be able to make changes to the common package and not having to do a Yarn install every time is they use symlinks. Now, one of the downsides of React Native, or one thing that doesn't work with React Native very well right now, is symlinks. So what we're going to have to do is work around it. So one option to work around it, and that worked out real quick. We'll talk about how we're going to handle symlinks in a second. Let's just look if our node modules worked. So if I do an ls on this node modules / React Native, you'll notice it's now here. So if I were to do a yarn start, it should indeed start the packager. Now the other thing I just want to mention is I have my application up and running over here, or my simulator. And if I try to reload this right now, it should have a problem. Yeah, perfect. Well, not perfect, but here's the error. At wow / common does not exist in the haste module map. So this is where it can't basically get the symlink that we're using for that. Now, one thing I want to mention real quick is to start up my simulator over there, I just did yarn iOS, which ran this over here. To start up the simulator. And the other thing is when I was starting it up, because I moved this into a different folder when we were setting up the workspace, there's this iOS build folder right here that has a basically cached version of the build, and it had the relative directories all messed up, so I had to delete this build folder to get that to work. So you may have to do the same thing if you were on Mac. I'm not sure if there's equivalent for Android, doesn't look like it. All right, so we started that. We need to handle this next error. Now, I'm not sure the best way to handle symlinks in React Native right now. I'm not sure if there's a standard way, because the default bundler that comes with React Native, I don't believe works with it. And there's a ton of open issues about it, so hopefully that'll be fixed soon. But one way that's super easy to fix it is this one library called WML. And basically what this does is we can just specify a directory. So for us, we're going to specify the common directory, and it's going to basically copy over the files every time we make a change. So we're going to be using that. So if you don't have this already installed on your computer, you're just going to run npm install, and it's going to install globally. So after that, what we're going to do is Control C this, is we're going to say add, and we're going to run this command right here. So we're going to go up a directory and get the common folder, and then we're going to put it into our node modules @wow/common. So you'll notice here, this is just the name of the package. And here's where the local directory is. All right, so if I do add, I'm going to say yes, ignore node modules. And then what I can do is WML start. So now what's going to happen is anytime I make a change in the common folder over there, it's going to copy over all the files. And where it's going to copy is that node modules /wow. If we take a look at that, we can see, funny enough, it looks like our app is here. I'm not sure why that's there. /common, and we can see our code is there. Now, I don't actually want, it kind of looked pink there, and I don't want it to be pink because that usually means it's a symlink, but let's just see if this fixed it. So yarn start, and if it didn't, I'm just going to delete it and then recreate it. So let's reload this. Yeah, see, I didn't think it would. And I'm just going to, let's do an ls on it again just to make sure. Okay, when I do an ls here, it showed it like that. But if I did an ls here, oh, this is because I'm in the root directory. That was just my bad. All right, let's come back over here. So one thing I noticed about the error is it's coming from React, or it's coming from not being able to find the module React. So what we can do is we can say no hoist on React as well as React Native, and that should be able to find it. So I'm going to just copy paste this, and I'm going to say React here instead of React Native, give that a save, and then I'm just going to remove the node modules and the parent. Reason being, if I remove them locally, it's going to destroy kind of our symlink setup or our WML setup. So I'm just going to say remove the root one and do yarn, and that should add it for us. And then when this is done, what we can do to double check this works is, again, we can just do an ls on the node modules and make sure that is all there. Another thing is to make sure your WL or WML thing is working is you can go to packages app, and if we do an ls there on common, oh, it's mine. Oh, I guess it deleted mine even though I didn't want it to delete. All right, we can just restart it. So Control C, and we'll restart that. And let's come back over here. All right, so it exists, and if I go into dist, you should be able to see the index.js. That's all good because this is what we're actually importing, is that index.js from the dist folder. So you want to make sure that's there. And now we should have a node modules React. It should probably be done loading. Yeah. So I'm going to come back and just say yarn start and start up the packager and then get this running. All right, cool. So that looks like it's able to load now, and we can increment so it is working. So as you can see, it's a little tricky to get this set up, but the gist of it is we had to no hoist some things, so bring some modules down. So in our case, we had to do React Native and React. And then after that, the other tricky part is making sure that the packages that we're using are symlinked, or in this case, we didn't want them symlinked. So we had to bring them over by using WML. And to do that, we said add, and then we say start, which actually moves them over. Now, whenever we make changes to the comment, it should move it over, so we don't need to do anything there as long as we have this up and running. The other thing is, if we were to add more packages we wanted to depend on, we'd have to WML add. Now, there are some other ways to achieve this same thing, I believe. In the past, I've played around with, I believe it's called like React Native Config or something, where you can kind of get it. I don't know if that solves the symlink problem or if it solves the no hoist problem, but one of those. But it can be a little harder to set up, where this is not too bad to set up. So I figured we'd start here, and then if we run into more problems, we can investigate that later. And then the only other thing is, as we program stuff in the future, we're going to be basically just doing stuff in the common folder, and then the app should be getting the updates and the web should be getting the updates at the same time. And I'm pretty much just going to focus on what it looks like on the web, just because it's a lot easier to get set up and to also just view it and watch the renders in real time versus React Native. We're going to be going over how you can use Mobx with React hooks. To start off, we're going to install two libraries in the common package. The first one is going to be Mobx at version 5.9, and then we're going to be using Mobx React Lite at version 1.01. And this library is going to allow us to actually get it working with hooks. So we're going to go ahead and install that. And for those of you that are not familiar with Mobx, what we're going to be using it for is state. So it is a state management library. Now to start off, we're going to be inside our common package. I'm going to go to source and create a new file. I'm going to create a folder outside, which I'm going to call stores, and we're going to say counter store.ts. So here I'm going to say class counter store. I'm just going to close that. And we're going to have a single field, which I'm going to call count, and it's going to have a default value of 0. Now I want to make this field observable, so we can do that with Mobx by saying observable, and we're going to import that. And that's coming from Mobx. Now it's going to complain about this. If we hover over, we can see it tells us we do not have experimental decorators turned on, so we can go over to our tsconfig and turn that on. And so here we're going to say decorator, and it's going to be this experimental decorators set to true. If I give that a save and I come back over here, it should no longer be complaining about this now. And I'm going to say export const, and we're going to say counter store context, and we're going to say create context, and that's coming from React, and then we're going to say new counter store and give that a save. Now this counter store context is what we're going to use in our components, and then we can basically interact with the store that way. So now in our index.ts, we had a basic example before where we were using useState to store the state of a counter, and then we are incrementing it. So now we're going to start by making this work with Mobx. We're going to start by wrapping it with an observer, and we're going to just wrap it the entire function there. And now observer is coming from that other package we installed. So that's Mobx React Lite observer. And then here, instead of using useState, we're going to say const counter store is equal to useContext. So we're using the useContext hook. And then we're going to pass in the counter store context that we created. So now what I can do is I can say counter store.count to display the count. And then when I press on the button, I can say counter store.count, and then we can just directly mutate it by incrementing it. So cool. So now I want to see this and see if it works. So to start off, I have my server already running for the website. So I have that up, and I'm just going to compile the code here. So I'm going to go to the package.json, and I'm going to add a new flag that'll make this a little easier called watch. And so we're going to say tsc, and we're going to say -watch. And so what's going to happen is when we run this, so yarn watch, it's going to compile our code and watch for any changes we make and recompile it. All right, so here is our website. Just give this a refresh, and then if we increment, you'll notice it worked just the same as it did before. So pretty cool, and Mobx looks pretty sweet. Being able to just mutate it like that is pretty simple, and I like that. So of course we're going to be using Mobx for the state management for our application. So we're going to be using it to store basically the state for working out or for workouts. So we're going to start by creating a new store today, and I'm going to call it the workout store. And here I'm going to say class workout store. And today we're just going to map out kind of a few different things that we're going to store in this. So there's basically 5 different exercises that this workout uses. So we're going to store that all in the store. And we're also going to start out by kind of hard coding things, and then we're going to go back later and possibly make this generic and work with, say, any set of exercises. So the 4 exercises is squat, or 5 exercises is squat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this current squat. And when I say current squat, this is what it stands for, is kind of like how much are you currently squatting, and this is going to be a number. So for example, you may be squatting 500 pounds, or 100 pounds, and we're going to track that in this variable. Let's see why it's unhappy. Oh, it has no initializer. Let's turn that setting off for now. Initializer. Strict property initializers is, I think, what we need to turn off to be able to get rid of that warning. Say false, and cool. And then we're going to say squat, bench press, overhead press, and I guess let's be consistent. I said press there, we'll do press there. Deadlift, and that'll be a number 2. And then lastly is the barbell row. All right, so these are the 5 exercises. And again, I've kind of hard coded it here. We could also go with the approach where we kind of have this in an array, but I'm going to start dead simple, and then we're going to kind of refactor things out and make it more dynamic as we go. We also need to know, so how the workout works is we're going to have 2 different days, like a day and a B day. And so we need to know what our last day was, because we do a different exercise on each day. So for example, I don't know, maybe on the A day you do squat, bench, deadlift, and on the B day you do squat, overhead, barbell, something like that. So we're going to say last workout type, and we're going to make that a union. So we're going to say workout type is either an A day or a B day. And so that's going to be of that type, workout type. Or why don't I call this workout day? That makes more sense, either an A day or a B day. So we're going to say last workout day. Well, I don't think last workout day really makes sense. We'll say last workout type is fine. And let's make that a lowercase o, I suppose. And then the last thing that I can think of, at least to start off with, is we want to know the history of what lifts that you've done. And so we can keep track of that. And the way I want to keep track of it is kind of a dictionary. That way we can keep track of, and the key being the date. So what I'm thinking is create an interface, which we're going to call history, call it workout history, not to confuse it with any other type of history like browser history or something. So the key I'm thinking is going to be a string representing the date. So we're going to say key of string. And here, I don't think I need to say key of, I can just say key. And then the value of this is going to be, I guess, an array. And the array is going to have basically the values for that day. So here I'm going to call this the movement, or the exercise is a better name. Exercise is a string, and then the value, which is a number. So for example, what that might look like is I'm thinking something like this. So on the 18th, so let's see, what month is it? I don't know, like 02, 18, 2019 is going to be the key. And then the value is going to be an array that looks like this. And then the exercise might be squat. And then the value might be like 90. So this day you squatted 90 pounds. And then, right, maybe you also did bench press that day. And you did that for 100 pounds. So this is what I'm thinking the data structure would be. And we may improve this data structure a little bit and add more fields to this later on. But this is what I'm thinking for the start of it. Anyway, this is kind of the start of our store. Let's go ahead and just add that type real quick. And then the next videos, we're going to continue kind of working on this store and start adding some components and start rendering some things for it. But before we end this video, let's just export this. So export const workout store context is equal to create context new workout store. So I was wanting to go over navigation today, specifically adding a button here that was like start workout, and then we'd be transitioning to a new screen. And to do that, I was planning on using React Navigation because I saw they have a React Native web version, and it works really nice for a React Native. So it'd be nice to be able to use it. But after I tried out the example, I saw the React Native web one was kind of just meh. And I didn't see a great way to integrate it so we could have one kind of routes that would work for both the native and for the web. I didn't see a great way to do that, and they didn't have TypeScript types. So I was like, let's go check out how DevHub does it to see how they were doing navigation. And it turns out they actually have just a ternary operation, and they have just two screens, a login screen and a main screen, and that's how they're picking. And our application is not too complex, so I figured we might as well do it in a similar manner and use Mobx to keep the state and just kind of have a ternary where we switch which page we're displaying. Because React navigation, at least for the web, seems like it still has some time before it's production ready / really a good choice. So that's what we're going to do in today's video. So I have the app up, or the website up, and we're going to create a in the common package a new folder here, and I'm going to call this routes. Actually, I'm just going to create it as a file, call it routes.tsx, and this is going to basically where I'm going to store it. So I'm going to say export const routes, and we're going to return null for now. Now, I said we're going to store this in Mobx, so I'm going to create a new store, which I'm going to say routers, or I guess routes store. I don't know if that's the best name for it. And I'm going to come over here and just copy the counter example. So routes. Actually, no, I like router store better. Just thinking about it. Let's go. Matches this better, I guess. Well, I guess I call that routes. Oh well. So I'm going to say router store here. Router store context. And then I'm going to say this is going to be a path. And the default path I'm going to say is the home page. Which actually I'm going to call the home page the history page, because I think we're going to store the workout history on the front page. So I'm going to call that history. And then actually, you know what? Well, so the history kind of implies like a navigation history or route history, so I don't want that to be confusing. So that just kind of what went through my brain with the naming convention right here. So you know what? Maybe we'll go back to home, but I think I'll keep it for history for now. Maybe I'll come and switch it later. As you can see, I'm not great with naming things. All right, so we have this, and so we're just going to use this in our routes over here in the same manner that we use the counter context. So we'll use that. So this is going to be the router store, use context, router store context. Let's import use context and come back to our router store. Not router store. We just need to use observer around this. I was going to copy and paste, but there's not really a good way to copy and paste it, so we'll just do that. And then we need to import this from the Mobx Lite. So that is this one right here. For whatever reason, it doesn't autocomplete well for me, at least when I do like control space. Just kidding, it worked today. So actually we're good to go. And so what I'm thinking here is we'll just conditionally render stuff based on what the router store value is. So if I go to, I'm going to create a new folder now, which I'm going to call modules. Inside of there, I'm going to create a history. You know what? Yeah, that's confusing. Let's just call it home. No, I'll call workout history. There we go. That's what I should really just do to make it super clear. So we'll say workout history. And here I'm going to say export const workout history. And I should really, I already have a, this should be TSX. TSX. I forgot I have the RH thing that I was going to use. This is my template to just create a React hook or a snippet. So let's use that to just save us a little typing. Workout history. And so the workout history is just going to say view text workout history page for now. Import all that. Import the text as well. And we're going to have just empty props for now. Give that a save. And then the other screen is going to be the current workout.tsx. And you know what, we could just copy what we have over here because we're going to do the same thing and just rename it. That'll be the fastest. And I misspelled page, but that is okay. Current workout page. And let's rename that current workout page. Okay, so let's just recap what we have so far. I made a dummy component called current workout. I created another dummy component called workout history, and these are basically going to represent the pages of our application. We have a Mobx store that's going to store which page we're actually rendering using this path. And maybe path is not the best name, really. It should be like, I guess, let's say screen is the best name for it, I suppose. And then in routes over here, this is what's going to display. And you know what? Instead of routes, we could really call it router. I think that makes more sense because that's really what it's doing. So what we're going to do here is basically decide which one we're going to render. So here we can say router store dot screen is equal to workout history. And you know what? I should make this this a union type, and then we get auto completion. So you can say routes workout history is really the only route right now. All right, so now if I do that, I think we should get auto completion here. Yeah. So pretty cool that you get auto completion on strings because it knows that the only possible type this can be is workout history. So there we go. So if it's equal to workout history, we're going to render the workout history screen. Otherwise, we're going to just render the current workout page. I just want to call it current workout, not current workout page. So let me get rid of that. So we'll rename that there, and then that's good there. And looks like I need to import React at the top. So this router now is what's going to be rendered over here. So we have all this junk, and we're saying export const app. Now I'm just going to say export. Actually, we should just say export all from router. Actually, that's not what I want to do. I want to say. So what I'm trying to decide is if I want to actually keep this container style, and I think I do. So I think I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff here and do this. And so now we'll have router like that. Okay, I think I like that. So I'm going to get rid of this. We don't need an observer here. And we can get rid of some of these styles. All right, so now what we're doing is we're rendering our app, which just renders the router. And then that router has these two screens right here. So let's look at that. So we have this. It says workout history page. And so now if I want to change pages, we can add our observer, and then we can get access to the Mobx state that we used, or the router store, and that'll allow us to say use context, and we're going to say router store context. And we're going to just add a button to transition. So this is going to be like create workout. And actually on React Native, you say title. So create workout like that. And then we're going to say on press. And we're going to say router store dot screen is equal to workout history. Oh, you know what? It can be now two possible screens. So button. React Native is where we're going to import it from. So let's go back to our screen over here. So it can either be workout history or current workout. And so we're just going to transition this to current workout. Give that a save. So now if I click that, it'll transition me to the current workout page. And of course, if I refresh, it's going to take us back to the home page or the workout history page. So cool. And we can add a button back over here. It says like go back or something, which we'll do in the future. And this is going to be basically how we're going to store or access the router state, is we can just access it through the router store context that we created with Mobx. Anyways, that's how we're going to be handling navigation, is just through this Mobx store, because one, it's dead simple, and it will work, and looks like it is. You can actually use this in a real application, and DevHub has had success with that. Anyway, guys, there's one last thing that I want to do before I end the video, and that's just to make this style a slight change to this. So I just want to make so this wraps, or that this is kind of like phone size. So if I right click and inspect, I can click on this. We can get what the size of like a phone is. So for example, we can get a large mobile phone is 425 pixels. So I'm going to just set like this container to 425 pixels, or I'm going to create a new one, which I'm going to call a wrapper. So style wrapper, styles.wrapper. And what my wrapper is going to do here is, all it's going to say is the width is going to be 100%, but it's going to have a max width of 425. The reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want my content to just like stretch the entire screen as it gets really big, and I kind of just want it to be centered right here at 425, and that be where it stays. So that's the plan, is to have like this little wrapper, and I think I want the color. I can't decide if I want this color in the center. I think I do, so I'm just going to move the background color to here and have it like that. The other thing that we need to do is, you'll notice that the color doesn't extend the full screen. If I hover over this, we're not currently doing, or we're not, this is this content. If we hover over, you can see that blue, it's not taking up the full screen. There's actually something in the React native web documentation about this, how we have to make the height 100%. So we're going to do that real quick, because that'll be helpful, so this spans the whole screen as well. So to do that, we actually need to touch some HTML. So we're going to go just to the web, public index.html, and all we're going to do is we're going to add a few styles. So we're going to say style height 100% is the first one we're going to add, and we're just going to add that to both the HTML, the body, and the div, because those are all the things that are not 100% right now. So if we look at the HTML is not 100%, body, the div, and now I think this, we can set it as 100%, I think now, and then it'll be able to match. Also, one thing I noticed when I was kind of digging around with this is the inspect tool is kind of broken with React Native Web, or at least it's not as good. You'll notice if I'm like looking at the styles of stuff, it's kind of broken up a ton. So like, let's say I want to see what color this button is. It's not really clear, and everything's broken up into 100 properties. So the inspect, being able to inspect and basically play with the CSS and stuff, is not exactly something you can do with React Native Web because of that and how many just classes they spit onto this. But anyway, that's just a side note that I noticed. If we come back over here, we can say this has a height of 100%, I think. We're saying flex 1. So I'm not sure what else we need to add to make it. I think that was the only things that I saw in the docs to make the height 100%. I guess we have to target this guy right here and set its height to 100%, which is, this is kind of the outermost div that we just did, or the outermost view. So I'm going to go check the React Native Web docs. In the next video, we'll make sure this spans the entire page, because we kind of want it to. We're going to be building out this card as a component. It's going to be keeping track of basically the current user's workout. So for example, as they're squatting, they're going to be marking how many reps they did and keeping track of their sets with this. Now, before we actually build this component out, there's one thing that I want to do real quick. When I left you last, we wanted to fix the height of our application, because right now it's not stretching to the very bottom. And we can easily fix this by making two changes. The first is in our public index.html. We want to just come over here, and this div, which has an ID of root, we're going to add a display flex on it. And then after that, in our index.tsx, if we come back in our common package, we're just going to say on our wrapper a flex of 1. And so what that's going to do now is this div is going to allow whatever content is in there to grow and flex, and then we said flex 1 to make it grow the wrapper grows and also the container grows, and now it goes all the way down the screen. So we're able to fix that. All right, so now we're going to get on to this component and start building this. Now, before we actually start building this component, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of go through how I look at this and what goes through my brain when I'm kind of like envisioning how to build this. I know this is a little bit blurry, but it'll do, and we kind of get the general shape of everything. So when I see something like this, I actually kind of, in my head, break it up into a lot of different boxes. Because most layouts, what I'll do is I'll break it up into big boxes and then smaller individual boxes, and that's usually all a layout is a bunch of boxes, even though this may not even look that boxy. So to start off, the first thing that I kind of think about is like I see the edges right here and just the container itself I think about. So the first thing I noticed is like it has rounded corners, so we're going to have to add a border radius to the container. Then I noticed there's a little shadow, so we're going to have to add a box shadow for the container itself. And then I kind of go into the content itself. The first thing I notice is there's some natural splits. So for example, the content is kind of split in the middle here. So we immediately see we're going to have like a view on top, which is going to be this portion, and then we're going to have a view on the bottom, which is this portion itself. So that was like the first big split that I saw. And so you can already imagine our container may display the flex direction may be a column, and we'll have this on top and this on the bottom. And then we'll notice this is going to be a text field, and if we look at this, we'll basically see there's a little padding on the side here, and there's a little padding on the side here, and then basically there's a ton of space in between them, right? So I imagine we're going to do something like space between. There's a justified content setting, which basically spaces this and pushes all the space between the items. So I imagine we're going to have a view here, then we're going to have some text, and then our view is going to say justified content, space between, and it's going to spread them like that. And then the bottom view down here, we can take a look at this. Again, we're going to have some space in between, and we'll notice they're equally spaced out. And basically, this is just a bunch of boxes again. So we just have a bunch of boxes, and they just repeat each other. The boxes themselves have a couple of states. We can see that here. This has like some numbers, and this has just blank. But this is actually not too complex, right? So we're going to have some padding of some sort on this as well, equal on all sides. We're going to notice there is a border radius around it, so we're going to have a circle, and then inside of this, so this is going to be a view, right? And then inside of the view is going to be some text, the actual number itself. Anyway, that's kind of how I like break it down, the layout. Before I even start coding, I actually like will think this all in my head and kind of just go through how I break down the UI, and that's kind of what I imagine each little piece to be. All right, so now that we kind of have an idea of what each piece is, let's go ahead and start making this. So I said the first thing we're going to start with, or at least the first thing I think about, is this outside container, so we're going to kind of create that. So let's hop on over to our code, and I'm going to make this into its own component, and I'm going to create a new folder here called UI, and I'm going to call this the workout card.tsx. And the reason why I made a folder for it is because I see this as a piece that could be used across our application. It's kind of like a shared UI piece. So I'm going to say RH for my React hook snippet, and we're going to say workout card. And so I'm going to say RNSS. This is my snippet for style sheets. And we're going to start by having an outermost view. And so this view is going to be that card that we just talked about. And let me just push this over a little bit. So we're going to say card, and we're going to just apply that style onto this real quick. So we're going to say style, styles.card, and then just for the sake of viewing it, I'm just going to say text, hey guys, and import that. I'm going to import all these things. So I just hit Control and space to bring up the IntelliSense, and I'll do that. Other thing I wanted to mention is you don't always have to do the hotkeys too. There's this little light bulb that sometimes appears. You can click on that, and that'll do the same thing where you can auto import things. All right, so now we're going to deal with this card style. So I already said the border radius, we're going to have something. It didn't look too bad, so I'm going to say like a border radius of 3. The background color was white, so we're going to say FFF. And then lastly was that box shadow, and I actually didn't even know how to do a box shadow in React before I did this, so I just went on over to, React Native. So I just went over Stack Overflow and saw this answer, and we can use these properties to add a box shadow. And all these variables we can kind of play with a little bit to get a better shadow. I played with the numbers a little bit, and I thought width of 2, height of 2, and then a shadow opacity of 0.3 looked pretty nice. But basically you can do whatever you want. And I think I also set the shadow radius to match the the radius that we used up here. So the other thing I like to do is just to render this right away and kind of get a feel for what it's looking like. So I'm going to just go over to the current workout screen that we have, and I'm going to just render a workout card. And just to get a feel for it. The other thing I'm going to do real quick is add a style sheet here. I'm just going to call this the container, and I'm going to set the background color just for this page to be FA. That way we can just see some contrast between the actual background color of the card and the background color of this. Oops, we're going to say styles.container. All right, give that a save, and let's go take a look at our content. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm going to have just like the Yarn watch running on the common package, and then I just have my server running from the web. So those are just kind of constantly running throughout the series. All right, so let's go over to that page by saying create workouts. Here we can see our card being rendered. The other thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of margin everywhere. So I'll say like a margin of 10. That way it's just not up against the edge and I can see it a little bit. So there we go, nice. Other thing I'm going to do real quick is just head over to our router store and set the default state to current workout so we don't have to have the screen change every single time. All right. So this is a good start for our card. So why don't we start making the two top view first. So I said there's going to be a view here and a view down here. So we're going to create those two. So back to our workout card. So here I'm going to say this is going to be like our top view, and then we're going to have a bottom view. And here we're going to say flex direction is going to be a column. That way we get them stacked. And again, I can display some text if I want to and just say bottom for now because we're going to fill in the top first. So for this, we saw some text, and this was actually the workout that they were doing. So why don't we take that as a prop? So here I'm going to say exercise, and that's just the name of the exercise. And we're just going to take that as a prop, and we'll render that here. And then on the other side, we saw I believe was just, I guess, the amount of reps that we're doing, and then for the weight that we're doing it at. So we could just say, here we'll say reps and weight as a string, and we'll take that as another prop that we're going to have on the right side. So reps and weight, and I guess it's the sets as well, but that'll cover it. So actually, you know what? I guess it's better to be the most clear. So one thing I can do, I don't know if I hit F2, it brings up this little window. I don't know if it's going to rename it here and here. Let's see if it does. Or maybe if I do an F2 here, it'll do it. So I'm going to say reps, sets, and weight. I don't know if that really even looks that good of a variable name. I think I like reps and weight better. It just looks a lot cleaner. All right. Anyway, it didn't really F2 well. All right, so let's add that. So I'm going to say exercise is going to be squat, and the reps and weight is going to be a 5x5, and we're doing 260 today. The other thing is if we look at our workout card right now, I believe the text probably is like all mashed up against each other. Nope, it's actually rendered below each other. That's kind of interesting. I would have thought they would do, you know what, I think the default might be flex direction is a column instead of row maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, so we're going to add a style to this. That way they are next to each other, or not next to each other, at least on the same line. So here I'm going to say top row, and we're going to say flex direction is a row, and then we're going to say justify. Well, let's just see what that looks like first, right? Before we add the next step. So we're going to say styles.topRow. And now they should be side by side. Nice. And so now we just want to add space. So this is on the other side over here. So for that, we're going to say justify content space between. And so now it's going to just jam space between them, and they're now on the sides. So, I mean, the next thing is we want to just add some padding. And we're basically adding padding all around the cards itself. So I can just say on my card up here, I can just add a padding of, I don't know, like 10 or something. See what that looks like. That looks pretty good. We could maybe add a little bit less. It also looks a little spacey on the bottom, but we can make these little changes later. The other thing, I'm going to just capitalize squat. And over here, I'm now going to just maybe make the text a little bit bigger. So here I'm going to say top row text. And I don't know, font size 16. Styles.topRow. And then same style we're going to apply to the other one as well. All right, let's take a look at that. Awesome. So let's do the bottom row now. So we have this part, and let's go back to our whiteboard. We don't really need this anymore. So the bottom row, again, we're going to have a view, and you'll notice it's kind of a row, and then we're just going to basically be looping through these 5 different things. So let's actually add the prop for that first. So this is going to be basically the sets, and this is going to be I guess this is really just an array, and it's going to be the values either. I think I'm going to say the value is a string because there's a couple different states. One of the states is an X marked through it. One of the states is blank, and the other state is a number with a color. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on. So I'm going to just say this is a string array. And I guess this makes more sense to say reps. But we already said, is this considered reps or is this considered sets? I guess it is sets. This makes more sense, I think. All right, so we have an array of sets, and we're basically going to map through that and render them here. So we're going to say sets.map, and for each set, we're going to return a view. So first off, actually, I'm not sure the best thing for the key itself. I actually think the only key we have for this is going to be the index. So key, we'll say it's the index, because there's really nothing unique about the set themselves. It's just going to be the number 5 or something. All right, and I guess we could say set plus the index. That I guess makes the most sense. All right, so this view is going to be that red circle thing. So we'll style that in a second, because it can possibly, again, be 3 different states. So why don't we say if set is equal to X, then we're going to return just the text X, and we're going to style this in a second. If set is blank, we're going to just render a blank text. Otherwise, we're going to render the circle right here. And for all of these, we're going to have to say a key. So key. All right, the other thing is this is also going to be a row. So why don't we just add the style for that real quick. So this is going to be the bottom row. And flex direction is going to be row. And then the we're going to use justify content. And we're going to say space. We want to do space between, but we also want to do, I don't know if space between or space evenly is going to work out better. We'll just have to see what it looks like. All right, so why don't we start with what the red circles look like and render that first. So we're going to have some kind of view with a large border radius. So I'm going to say circle is going to have a border radius of, say, 9. And then we're also going to have to set a background color. And I thought it'd be kind of nice to, instead of just copying their color scheme, to make our own color scheme. So I just went to color.adobe. This is a nice little tool. It has a little color wheel where you can put a color, and it'll give you, there's different ways you can do to create basically color palettes. So right now I'm doing complementary color palette for just white. And so we're going to make our little circles this green color. All right, so come back over here and we'll render this color for our circle. All right, so here we're going to say styles.circle, and then inside of that we're just going to render some text, and we may need to like align this in the center and stuff, and this is just going to be the set itself. So let's go ahead and add some sets over here. So let's say for now we're just going to do an array of 5, and we'll have that a couple times. So 5 sets of 5 is what we'll do at first, and let's just see what that looks like. Didn't I say flex row, I thought? Let's just see what I messed up with my card, because they're all stacked. Did I do bottom row, flex direction is a row? So, okay, I just didn't actually set it. Okay. So we're gonna say styles dot bottom row, and let's see what that looks like now. All right, we didn't actually do a very good job because we need to add, I guess, some padding to make it more circular. So let's play with the padding a little bit. I don't think I really made too many circles like this. Let's do like 10, just see what even padding looks like. All right, so this looks kind of blocky. I think I just need to add like a border radius of way more, maybe like 15, and that'll get more circular. All right, we got an oval, 20. Is that as much as we can go? So let's say padding of now 30. That's like that. All right, let's say border radius 30. All right, we're almost at a circle. I don't know, like 60. Let's just get there. I feel like there's probably an optimal circle amount here. I'm gonna have to Google this after I'm done with this video. I think we'll just call this good for now, and then I'll Google if I just need to do, I don't know if you're just supposed to set like a giant border radius to get a good circle or what, because this is still looking a little weird here. Anyway, so let's shrink the padding a little bit. Let's do like 15. And then let's go ahead, space evenly looks pretty decent. I think the other thing is I want some like padding on the bottom itself. I also want to make the text of this white. So this is going to be circle text. Color is going to be FFF. So this is the circle text. And then I want to add some padding to the top of this. So on our bottom row, I'm going to say margin top, and let's just say like 10. I don't know, 10's like the magic number today. We could probably do like a wee bit more, maybe like 14. All right, this kind of looks like what it should look like, I think. Let's go ahead and do the other 2 states. So the other 2 states where there's an X in the middle and that it's grayed out. All right, so for us, that's going to be these 2 right here. And we're going to use the circle in all 3 states. That's something I didn't really think about. So what we're going to do is copy this. The only thing that differs is its color. So we'll taste that. And what we're going to do is just take an array of styles. And here we're going to set, I guess, styles.gray. And all that styles.gray does is set the background color to gray. And so this is going to render some text, and it's going to be an X. Let's do a big capital X. Oops. And this is just going to be a blank. There's going to be nothing. It's just a single view. Oops. And let's close that tag. All right, so let's add the styles.gray. Background color. And I don't know if it came with a gray over here that would work. This is FF. Oh, all of them are FFF. This brown could work as well. Let's try that out. Let's see if that looks funky or not. I guess it's no longer really gray. All right, so let's render a few different ones. So this is going to be an X. All right, let's do that one blank, and this one's an X. All right, so these are two different states for it. So this has a slightly different padding, if it doesn't have a number or not. So I think when I need to figure out how to do a nice even circle, we'll fix the padding on this thing. But I think that looks fine enough. The text itself, we could probably increase a little bit on all of them. So we'll come back to our card. So I said circled text right here. I think I'm going to just rename that to white text because I want to say a circle text and set the global font size. By the way, I did F2 to rename that. That's how that little pop-up came up. And I think it renamed it down here automatically for me. So just a heads up on that. So circle size, we'll say font size of, let's do 15 again. Or did I say 16 above? We'll do 16 again. And then I can set that here. So styles dot circle text. And we'll do that here as well. So it's going to be white text. And it's going to be styles dot circle. And one last thing I want to do is actually make this X like more of a gray color, I think. I already did gray here. This should really be, the background could be like faded background. Because we could change the color on that. So this is going to be gray text. And we're going to say color. And I'm just going to say gray. And you know, I spelled it with an A there and an E there. All right, so let's add that. Styles.gray. Let's take a look. Now we kind of have a grayed out X. That's kind of the feel I think they had on theirs. So there we go. That's basically the start of our component card here. I think in the next video what we'll do is we'll perfect the circle itself. Also, I want to, before we end the video, just see how space between and space evenly looked. So space between, spread it to the edges. Maybe that's better. I think that fit more to what this was doing, whereas on the edges, yeah, I think that was closer to what this was like. So yeah, we're going to make this interactive and actually respond to, for example, clicks, and we'll also get the circles working. So we're going to start by making these ovals into circles. Thank you guys in the comments for suggestions on how to do that. And then we're going to be making them interactive, so when you actually click on them, they're going to change. And then lastly, I got a cool Mobx tip in the comments as well that we're going to implement. We're going to be doing a root store that we're going to set up today. So to start off, let's go ahead and fix these circles. So we're going to go over to our circle style, and we're going to remove the padding. Instead of padding, just doing a height and width. So a height of 50 and a width of 50. And then the recommendation was to do half of the height / width as our border radius. So in this case, we'll do 25. So if we come back over here, you'll notice they are way more circular. Now the number itself is now off the plane. We can fix that by coming over to the circle text and just saying margin auto. Give that a save, and now we have it centered. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick is this gray that we put in there is kind of hard to read. So I just went into the color wheel that we used yesterday, pasted the brown that we're using, and basically just replaced it with this. So just picked a different complementary color, and seems to work better. So I'm going to just replace the gray text that we were using. So paste that in. And that's what it looks like. And you can see it still has that kind of faded view, but it's a little bit more readable. All right, so let's start with this root store that I was talking about. We'll start with that. So the idea with this is we want to be able to access multiple stores. So in our Mobx, we have a router store, and a workout store, and we want to access both of them. And so one way to access both of them is, for example, we could say use context, and we could say our workout store here and our router store, and just have use context twice. But downside of this, we could have use context a bunch of times, so it's kind of repetitive. And also, we may want to use the router store inside of the workout store, or be able to access the data, and vice versa. So that's what we're going to set up with the root store. It's going to give us access to both of those things, an easy way to access all the stores, and also a way for the stores to see each other. So we're going to create a file in our stores called rootstore.ts, and I'm going to say export class root store. And the idea of this is we're going to be creating a field on the root store for every single store that we have. So I'm going to say router store, and we're just going to say is a new router store, and we need to export it. Export, and we're no longer going to need the context, which will the router store context, because we're just going to create a single context for the root store. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove it from the workout store as well, and export it. All right, so back to our root. So we have a router store, and then we're going to be passing in this, which I'll explain in a second. So we're going to do workout store here as well. All right, so the reason why we're passing in this is that way we can access all the different stores that are on there. To be able to get this to work, we just need to go over to our router store and accept this as a constructor. So let me just save all these files, come over to router store, and here we're going to say constructor, and here we're going to take a root store as the prop, or really this is just the first parameter of the constructor. We're going to say root store. I'm going to say this.rootStore is equal to root store. And so what we get from this, well, actually, let's add the type up here. So root store is a root store. So the advantage is now we can access it by saying this dot and root store dot, and we can access, for example, the workout data in our router store if we need to. And we're not going to be needing it in this video, but we may need it in a future video. I'm going to copy this over and just paste this into the workout as well. All right, and we're just going to import these, and then back to our root store. We're just going to create a context from it. So we're saying export const root store context is equal to create context and a new root store. So now how we actually use this in our application, we can go back to our router. Here we're going to call this root store instead. Say root store context, and now we just say root store dot router store to access it. But if we wanted to, we also have access now to our workout store. So now we don't have to spam a bunch of contexts. We just access it through that. And then we're just going to do the same thing in our workout history. That's the other place we're using the router store. All right. And oops, that should be root store dot router store. Then let's import those, give it a save, and we're good to go. All right, so let's just make sure we didn't break anything. If we come back over here, we see everything nicely. I mean, we didn't really break it. It's compiling. Everything's good. All right, so that's the root store method, or I guess you'd say abstraction, I guess. So next up, we're going to make this interactive. So to make this interactive, we want to start storing stuff in our workout store. Basically, we want to store the current workout, and when the user clicks, we're going to decrement the amount of reps that they actually did on that workout. So for example, this means that they did 5 reps of the squat. All right, so we're going to come back over here. I'm going to make these fields observable. And I'm just going to copy that and add it to each field. And let's add a space, paste that in. All right, and we'll remove that. All right. So now I made each one of these observable. We're going to have an extra field on here, and this is going to be like the current exercises that the user is doing. So I'm going to say current exercises, and this is going to be an array. So I'm going to call this current exercise. So we're going to create this type, and it's going to be an array, and at first the array is going to be empty. So let's create an interface for this. Current exercise. And for this, we're going to have a few things. So we're going to have the weight, which is going to be a number. We're going to have the number of reps. So num reps. We have the number of sets. And actually, we're just going to say reps, I think, instead of num reps. I think that makes more sense. And then the exercise itself, which is just going to be a string. So that's pretty much all the data that we need to know about this. So we're just going to head on over to our workout history, and we're going to just create a add-on to this current exercise array. So here, whenever we transition screens right here, we're just going to say root store dot workout store dot current exercises dot push. So we're just going to add a few exercises for them to do right before we move to this screen. So, there's one other thing that we need to add to that. We need to keep track of the sets that they're doing. So sets is going to be an array of strings. All right, so here we're going to say the name or the exercise is going to be squat. The number of sets is going to be 5. The reps is going to be 5. Now the sets is going to be an array that looks something like this. So 5, 5, 5. And I think later on we're going to make a function to automatically create this for us, but we'll hard code it for now. And the weight we're going to do at 260 today. And so if we wanted to, we could do this a couple times. And I think with push, you can actually make this into a single call. So if I just do a comma there, you can do it like this. And we can do another exercise. So say we want to do the bench press. Bench press. We'll do 5, 5, and then the weight I'm only going to do 200 on. And then the deadlift, we're only going to do one set. So I'm going to say deadlift for 360, and this is all going to be X's. All right. And number of sets is just going to be 1. All right, so let's go to our current workout. So that is basically just going to read these values, map through them, and render the cards. So let's do that. We're going to first need to wrap this in an observer, because we want to access that context. So root store use context, and here we're going to do the root store context. And then instead of just having a single workout card like that, we're going to say root store dot workout store dot current exercises dot map. And so for each exercise, which I guess we'll just call E, we're going to return a workout card. So here I'm going to say the key is just the name of the exercise, and we can say e.exercise there. And then this little thing right here we can create. So we'll make this a string template. So this is the amount of weight that they're doing. So e.weight. This is the number of reps. So e.reps, and this is the number of sets. So e.numsets. And then this is the sets themselves. So we're going to say e.sets. So we're going to give that a save. Let's come look at that. And it should just be rendering a couple cards, but I messed up somewhere. The other thing that I wanted to do real quick is, we add observer here. We're going to have to add observer to the workout card as well, because this is actually using the Mobx values. I don't think that's our particular problem though. Observer. The other thing I wanted to do real quick is just in our I noticed when this was blank that this was not the right color. So if I come back over here and we go to our workout history, oh, sorry, it's current workout. You notice how we set the background color to FA, 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 and it's not showing? We just need to say flex 1, I believe, so it stretches across the whole screen. Okay, so now you'll notice we have like this light gray, and then there's this light blue, because we have some margin in our index, I think. No, we didn't add any margin here. I don't know what we have a margin on. I don't know if we set a margin anywhere in our application. It could just be on the body itself that there's some kind of margin. If we do an inspect, maybe we'll be able to see it. We set a margin left. Oh, you know what? We did set a margin. We set it right here. Let's change that to padding. There we go. Now we have fully grayed. All right, so let's figure out what the heck is going wrong with this. Oh yeah, so we're actually starting on this current workout page when really we are never coming over to workout history and adding the items to the array. So that just means we need to come over to our router store and change basically the starting route is supposed to be workout history. So now if I come back over here, we create a workout, we can see the cards actually showing up. So nice. Let's add a little bit of margin so that they are not just like smashed against each other, but we can see we're programmatically creating our workout right here. So that's pretty neat. So just go back to, I guess, the workout card, and then in the card itself, we'll just set a margin bottom of 10. That seems to be the magic number we've been using. And create workout. Nice. All right, so lastly, we just want to be able to click, and this will be kind of cycle through. So to do that, we're going to just add an on press. Now we can't add an on press. Well, maybe you can add an on press to view. I don't even know if you can. It doesn't look like there is an on press property. But anyway, we're going to use touchable opacity. That has an on press that we can use. And then what we're going to do is take a on press function as a prop here. So we're going to say on set press, and what we're going to pass in is the index that they pressed, and then it's just going to be returning void. So this is the type definition for a function. And so here we're going to say on set press, and here we're going to say on set press, and then we're just going to pass in the index. So in our function up here, we're going to have to actually handle this and actually update the little circle. So we're going to make this a touchable opacity, and the X we do not need to make a touchable opacity, so we can just ignore that. So let's copy this, and we're going to just paste it in here. And let's just, there we go. And come back to our current workout now, implement this on set press. So this is going to be the set index. And so what we're going to do is we basically know what the current value is. So we say, we'll call it V, which is going to be the current exercise sets set index. So this V is just going to be, for example, a string that says the value 5, because we're just getting the current set. And so we're just going to check if the current set is blank, because if it is, we're going to say new value is a string, and we're going to say the new value should be, after you hit nothing, it should be, I believe, 5, or really it should be the number of reps. So we're going to say E reps, and we need to make that into a string. So backticks like that. Else if V is equal to 0, it is now, oops, not return, is equal to an empty string, single, and then else the new value is going to be whatever the current value is minus 1. So value is currently a string, so we're going to say parse int V minus 1, and then this needs to be a string, so we're going to convert it like that. And then lastly, since we're using Mobx, we can just directly update the value. Now I don't know if we can just update the value here that we're mapping through. We can try that and see if that will work. So I can say .sets set index, and that's equal to the new value. All right, so let's see if this updates when we click on anything now. So go create, and sure enough it does. So we can just modify it there, which is pretty neat. Okay, so we can see we can cycle through that now. So click that. Notice click on the X, doesn't do anything. But so yeah, so how this works is, for example, if I'm deadlifting, I basically, you know what, actually everything should start off at blank. So go to workout history. This should actually start out all blank, not a bunch of 5s. It should look like that when it starts. And then as I squat, when I do the first squat, I'll click it. I did 5 reps, then I did 5 reps. And then here, maybe I only did 3 reps. And then here I went down to, I don't know, 0 reps and I failed. So that's kind of how you keep track of your reps as you're doing it. So we're going to be building this little timer component at the bottom here today. We're going to start with building out the UI, and then we're going to create a Mobx store that's going to increment the timer and keep the state for it. Now the purpose of this timer is after you complete an exercise, you want to wait like 5 minutes or so, or 3 minutes, and then do the exercise again. So this timer is going to keep track of that time for you, and as you proceed, it's going to tell you how much time you have left before you need to do the exercise again. So let's go ahead and start off with the UI of this. So the first thing is it's going to be at the very bottom, and we're going to start on that now. So at the bottom, we're going to create a new UI component here. I'm going to call this workout timer.tsx, and I'm going to say React hook, and use my snippet, and then workout timer. Now we're going to render a view, and you'll notice the view is at the very bottom of the screen. So the way that we get something at the very bottom of the screen is we're going to be using absolute positioning. So I'm going to say container style here, and I'm going to say position absolute, and then I'm going to say the bottom 0, and I'm going to say left of 0. That way it's starting at the very leftmost and at the very bottommost. Next, I'm going to give it a height of, let's say, 50, and a width of 100%. Then I'm going to set a background color for it. And then for this, I'm just going to go back to our color wheel and pick one of the colors. Let's go ahead and pick the green and paste that in. And so I'm going to say styles.container. And then inside of here, I'm just going to say text, and I'm going to say hello for now. And we're just going to see if this renders a box at the very bottom of the screen. So we'll import this, and not view base, view, and we'll give this a save. And then I'm going to just come over here to the current workout and render this workout timer at the bottom. So give that a save. Then let's come back to our React application, create the workout, and you'll notice now we have a box at the very bottom and it says hello in it. So that's kind of how we're going to position the box, and we had to give it a height because we don't really have much content in this, but I guess we could have done it based off of the content too, but I'm just going to do a static height, I think. All right, so the next thing is I'm not going to worry about the text in the middle. I'm just going to have the timer on the left and an X on the right. So this is going to be the text on the left, and then this is going to be the X on the right. So let's style each one of these. I'm going to start with the X. The X, I'm going to again just pick a color from our color picker, and I'll just go with this one. And then the font size, I'm going to say as like 20. We'll see if that's too big. And then this is going to be the actual time text. And this is going to be the color, I'll say, is white. And the font size, a little bit smaller, maybe 18. Right now, I'm just calling it hello, but we're going to be replacing that in a little bit. So styles.timetext, and then styles.x. And then I want space to be between these guys again. So in my container, I'm going to say justify content space between. and that should push them to the edges. All right, so let's take a look at it. Create the workout. It looks like I need to have them in a row, so I'm gonna say flex direction row, flex direction row. That way they align. And now we have them on opposite sides. Cool. So next thing is I want to add basically some spacing, some padding around it, and basically center them. So I'm gonna say align items center. And then I'm just gonna add like a padding of 10 or something, and we'll give that a save. All right, and we'll see what that looks like. Good. And actually, I don't want to add a padding because one other thing that we're going to add is kind of like a loading indicator at the top. That's not something you can see in the screenshot, but it's in the app itself. Is basically when the timer starts, there's a little line that kind of goes across. So we're going to be building that. I guess we'll build that at the end when we have the state in there. So this is basically going to be the time, and then we have this little X. I want the X to be quite a bit bigger, I think, maybe like 30. So it's easy to click on. And I guess we want a little bit more space, I guess padding on the side of that as well. And I also want to make it touchable opacity like that. And then I'm going to say on press. And then here we're just going to say a prop that we're going to take in here. So on X press, push. And this is just going to be a function, and that's the function definition. So it takes no parameters and then returns void, so nothing. On Express, I'll pass that in there. And so when we render it over here, we're going to have to use that on Express. And for now, I'm just going to do nothing when the X is pressed. So now it should be clickable. So sweet. And again, let's add a little bit more. I'm gonna say padding is like 30, and I'm just going to say padding on the left and the right side, so that should be padding horizontal, because we're already centering it. All right, so cool. So I'm pretty happy with this right now. We can click on this. The next thing is we want to make this interactive. By interactive, I mean this should be incrementing up as we kind of like a timer approach. So to do this, we're going to create a new store to keep track of this. So I'm going to say workout timer store.ts. Export class workout timer store. And now what are we going to actually put inside of this, right? So I was looking at this one article and I liked their approach. They were basically building a stopwatch with Mobx. And so that's going to be very similar to what we're doing. So we're going to take a few cues for how they kind of set up theirs. So what they do is they have, instead of, for example, creating the number of seconds that the timer has been running for, basically you have a date the timer started off, and then you do a difference between the start and the current date, which we'll see in a second. So we're going to create an observable here, and this is going to be basically the start time. And so start time, I'm going to just say is new date, but we're going to talk about that in a second, what we're going to do instead. And so basically what we want to do is also we want to know whether the timer is running. So you create an is running variable, and this is going to be false by default. The other thing is I want to know the amount of seconds that have basically passed. So for example, let's say we started at a current date, start at a current or some time, and then we want to compare the start time versus the current time and compute the difference in seconds. So that's what this is going to store right here. So the next thing is we basically need to start the timer, and we need to basically end the timer. And then in the middle, we're going to have this thing called measure, which basically is going to be running they did it every 10 milliseconds, I believe. We're going to run it every second, and basically it's going to compute the difference. But you'll see what this will make more sense in a second. And I'll link this article below if you want to check it out, because it was pretty good. So we're going to create an action. We haven't really used actions in Mobx before, but basically they're just a function that change some of the variables or the fields in the store. So we're going to do this start timer, and I'm not going to worry about this check right here. We don't really have that problem. Actually, in our particular application, we actually don't want it to function like that anyway. All right, so what they use for the start time is they're using Moment, and so we're going to be using a slightly different library for that. It's called day.js, so we're going to install that, and it doesn't really matter what version you install that. Yarn add, so just go ahead and do that. And basically what day.js is a moment, but it's not as large. I believe it matches most of the APIs, if not all of them, but it just does not have a giant bundle size. And we don't really need all the features of Moment anyway. We just need the ones that day.js supports. Really, we're only using one function of it, which we'll see in a second. So when we start the timer, we're basically going to say we're currently running. So we set that to true, and then we get the current time. And then we're just going to import day.js here. There we go. And then we're going to call this timer. And then instead of new date here, we'll call we'll make it a day.js as the default. All right, so let's do the measure action. Oops, it should be measure. Actually, I can just copy their measure. We're going to basically do that. All right. So their measure, what they do is if it's currently, so if you turn this variable off, measure is going to stop. Because basically what it does is it recursively calls itself. So as soon as we say false, it's going to stop running. So that's what that does. What it does next is it sets the current difference in time. So it's going to be the seconds variable for us, since we don't really care about milliseconds. And then lastly, it's going to do set timeout. And so what set timeout does is after this many milliseconds, it's going to call this function. And so you notice it's calling itself. So it's recursively calling itself, waiting 10 milliseconds. For us, we just care about seconds, so we're going to do that. And then this, I'm going to call this seconds, and we're going to say day.js.diff, and then we just have to say the unit that we want back, in this case, the second. So what's going to happen is day.js creates a date object in the current time. So it's going to say the current time difference to when we started, and that's going to be in seconds. All right, so we have start timer. The last thing we really need is just to end the timer. And to end the timer, it's very simple. All we do is we set is running to false, and then that stops it from basically continuing to measure itself over and over again. And by the way, whenever measure gets called, basically we're going to be able to see the new value of seconds, and that's going to re-render our application. So that's how that's going to work. And then we basically want to just add a helper here, which I'm calling display. And it's similar to what they did. And we're going to say computed, and this is going to be display. And so we haven't done a computed property either. So a computed property is basically it uses some of the fields, and it generates a new field based off of it. So for example, we're basically going to take the current difference in seconds. So there might be 30 seconds difference, and we're just going to format that into a string. So we're going to say, and also this is going to be a variable that we want to, actually I'll show you guys the difference before. I'm going to add the get keyword, but I'll show you what the difference is with including it and not including that is. So here I want to display the number of minutes. So I'm going to say this.seconds divided by 60, and then I'm just going to say math.floor on that. And I guess I can say const minutes to be super clear. And then the number of seconds, right, is going to be this.seconds mod. And then all I want to do is I may want to pad this with a 0 as well. But I guess why don't I show you guys what this looks like first. Minutes colon seconds. All right. And now if we go back over to our current workout, I want to pass to our workout timer the current time. So we're going to say current time. And we're going to say this, or sorry, not this. We just need to access our root store. And we'll say root store dot. And now we want to access the workout timer store. So we need to add that to our root store. So let's go to that. And we're going to say workout timer. And I'm not going to worry about passing this in because we're not going to need it. So now we can access that over here. and we're going to say dot display. And we'll come back over here and we're going to say current time is a string. And so instead of rendering hello here, we're going to render current time. And if I come back over to this, you'll notice I'm calling display like a regular function. Now, if I want this to be more of a property that's constantly changing instead of calling it as a function, I can do that. And that is what that get keyword does. So when I say get, basically it's going to call the function to get the property. And now we can use it as just a regular property and we can access the field like that. So pretty cool. So let's just see if we see stuff and we don't get any errors. Oh, let's rewatch. Now you'll notice we're not actually starting the timer, so that should we shouldn't see it ticking. But if we right here on the workout card, when we press on a workout, I guess we'll do it at the bottom here. Now I guess let's just do it at the top. I keep wanting to say this, but we're just going to say root store dot timer dot is running, or sorry, we don't call it is running, we say start timer. And that's just going to call our action to kick things off. All right, so we'll come over here. So we can see it's zeros. We can see our X here. And if I press this, you'll notice it's incrementing every second now. So pretty neat. So let's take this a step further. One thing is we may want to pad this with a 0 so it just looks a little bit nicer. So I guess we go to our workout or store, and we can just make a simple utility function. And we're just going to say const pad 0. And this is just going to take a number, and it's going to say if number is greater than 10 greater or equal to 10, we'll just return it. Otherwise, we're going to return it with a 0 in front. So give that a save, and then we can wrap these. Pad 0. And now I think we should see 0, 0. Click on this, and it increments nicely. Cool. The other thing is I want to close the timer when I click on the X. And that should really reset the timer as well. So if we come back to the current workout and the on press here, we're just going to say root store dot workout timer, and we're going to say stop, or end timer, I guess is what I called it. We'll pass that in. So now we'll let tick 1, 2, 3 or whatever. Click the X, and oh, it's not, cannot add property is running, object is not extensible. Oh, what happened to this? Workout timer, what did I do? This dot is running is now false. I wonder if it's because I didn't call it in a lambda. If I do that, I wonder if it works. Let's see. So start it, increment, do that. Yep, and it looks like, I guess I'm not resetting the seconds to 0, so that would be a good thing to do, but that stopped it. I'm actually not sure why I need to do a lambda with this. Probably something to do with it being an observable or something that was causing it to do weird things. So in this, we're going to say this.seconds is equal to 0 too. The other thing is we only want this timer to display if it's running. So we're going to say root store dot workouts timer dot is running, and if it is, then we can just do a ternary. Otherwise, we're going to return null. Reason why I went with ternary instead of doing double and there is sometimes I've had problems with that with React Native doing the and, so I usually do that. So we should not see the timer right away. I click on this, we now see the timer, and it's started and it's going. The last thing that we can do is we can add a little progress bar if you wanted at the top here that kind of goes as it increments. But before we do that, let me click the clear, make sure that works. Click it again. Nice. Also, if I click this, I want to restart the timer. Nice, that worked. The other thing I wanted to do real quick before we actually do the progress bar is I want to stop the timer if this component gets unmounted. So to do that, I'm going to say use effect, and I only want this to run once. And in the cleanup function here, all I'm going to say is root store.stop timer or end timer. And I'm just going to go to my thing real quick and rename this. So I'm going to push F2 to stop timer because I constantly keep typing that. And that should rename it over here. And F2 did rename it over here for me automatically. Cool. So with the use effect, you'll notice I returned a function. This is the cleanup function, meaning it's only going to be called when this component, I believe, is getting unmounted. So it should stop the timer then. And then I put brackets here because I only want this to be called at the beginning. Okay, so let's do that progress bar real quick. That should be pretty easy. If we go to our workout timer, basically all we're going to do here is we want to have something that has a width that changes. So here I'm going to say line. It's going to have a height of, let's say, 3. We're not going to set the width. Background color of this, again, let's go pick a color from this. Let's try this brown. See how that looks. And let me think if there's anything else. I don't think that's anything else that needs to go with that. I want to wrap these guys in a view. And then I want to have a view up here. And this view up here is going to be the line. And it's going to sit out on top. So styles.line. So basically at the very top of the component, I want the line, and then I want this stuff inside of it. But I kind of have some flex stuff going on, so I'm going to have to move that down. So I'm going to create a style called row. And what row is going to do is it's going to say justify content, flex direction, and center, all that fun stuff. All right, so we'll put that here. Style, styles.row. All right, I'm just going to see what this looks like. And this is going to be a array because we want to pass in a width. And the width is going to be constantly changing. So I'm just going to set it to 50% right now so we can see what it looks like. All right, press this. All right, so I can kind of see this thing right here. You'll notice how it's getting pushed to the side because we have some padding. So what I want to do, I'm going to say with this view, I'm going to have it flex. So the row here is going to flex 1. And I'm going to move the padding to the bottom to the row. All right, and we'll press this. And now it's right here. Now that's super hard to read, so why don't I pick a different color? Let's try this one, see if that shows up better. If it doesn't, we can just pick white too. All right, that looks way better. Cool. And so what's going to happen is we basically just want to compute the percent of the width we should be showing. And we're going to just take that as a property and compute that in our store. So percent is a string, percent, and that's what we're just going to pass in here. All right, so we don't really have a percent yet, so we're going to create that in our store. So I'm going to say root store.workout timer.percent, and then let's go create that percent. So our timer over here, this is going to be another computed property. And I'm going to say percent. And basically what the percent's going to be is I don't want this to be any bigger than 100%. So I'm going to say math dot the smallest number here. The max it can be is I want it to be no bigger than 100. And what's going to happen is I'm going to put a percent sign here at the end because this is just the format of the width. And then here I want to get the current diff. So that's going to be seconds divided by whatever I want the completion to be. So if I want the timer to run out at 3 minutes, I'd put 180 seconds. If I wanted like 5 minutes, I would put, 5 times 60, 300. All right, so if we take a look at that, we should be able to see a little timer that will increment. I don't see anything, so I wonder if I messed something up. I'm going to just go over to the percent and console log it and see what the value is. So console.log the % and see what we're getting. Because basically what we want to display is a 0% good, and then it should be incrementally getting bigger. Okay, so it's super small right now, so that's the problem. So I just need to times this times 100. So wrap that in parentheses and say times 100. Give that a save. Click that, and there we go. So as we can see, it's kind of ticking, and we can see the percentages increasing there. We can see we have like a little progress bar going now, so that's pretty neat. And then so basically, all right, I want to do one exercise. It's going to reset the timer, and then it's going to go. And let's say I'm done waiting. I can either just click the X, or I can do that. And the other thing is, when it gets down to 0 and I click it and it goes here, it should clear the timer as well. So let's add that real quick. That's very easy too. That's going to be just, so when it's 0 and we click to make it nothing, we're going to say root store.workoutTimer.stop. So we could stop the timer by clicking it a couple times and going to 0 and clicking it. Sweet. So anyway, this is pretty nifty. I'm really enjoying Mobx, and I really like just putting these values into Mobx, being able to create these computed values automatically that are automatically changing as everything is changing. And then we can kind of, we basically just created this measure method that just constantly is happening every second that is causing a re-render and changing the time on the screen. And the other cool thing about us using start time is if, for example, we were to persist the state, which we're going to do later, and the user comes back, they're going to see how much elapsed time has happened because we're storing the start time. So we are revisiting the topic of navigation today because we have a little bit of a flaw in our current setup. So right now we are storing the navigation state in Mobx. And what that means is we're not syncing it with the URL right now. So if I were to create a workout, this is a different screen. And you'll notice the URL does not change. And that is the flaw that we currently have. And so what that means is if I were to refresh the page or just revisit this URL, we'd start back over here. And there's no way to visit this screen directly, which you would experience with a regular website. Whoops. So that is what we're going to try fixing today. Now you'll notice the reason why I picked this option in the first place is because I tried out React Navigation and the web version of it was not very good, and it would be very difficult to try to get that to work and also get it to work with the native version. But I forgot about this one package that I used to use for React Native called React Router. So React Router is the standard for the web navigation. If you're building a website in React, you're probably using React Router. But they also have a native version, and I was using this for a little bit, but I found React Navigation to be way stronger when using React Native. But I think React Router is a great choice for what we're currently doing because it is a very similar API between the web and the native. So if we just look at what the web looks like, we can go to the quick start. You'll notice basically what they do is you create a router and then you put routes in it. And the native version is the exact same. So if we come look at this, we go to the quick start, we're just going to create a router. Now they call it native router, so we're gonna have to deal with that, but you just say routes the same way. And you deal with the API in almost the same manner, and it's not widely different. So this is gonna work great for our React Native web because we can easily switch between the React Native and the web version. So that's what we're gonna implement today. So we're going to start by coming over to our code, and I have the router.tsx open in our common package because that's what we're going to be playing around with. So to start off, I'm going to just install the types for both of these packages and then also the packages themselves. And I'm installing it at version 4.31 and 4.24. And you'll notice I'm installing React Router DOM and React Router Native. And then when this is done, we're going to install the packages themselves, React Router DOM, and 4.3.1 at DOM, and the native is 4.3.0. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to just rename this current file that we have, router, to routes, just so it's a little bit clearer. So I'm going to rename this to routes, and it's going to ask me if I want to update this everywhere. I'm going to say yes. So what that means is in my index file where we're importing the routes, it just automatically renamed it for me. All right, I'm also going to push F2 and rename this to routes. So save that and save that over here. Again, just refactors it in VS Code so it's now updated over here. So now I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it router. So that was the whole reason why I just renamed it, because I want to create a new folder called router here. And then I'm going to create a folder called index.ts, a file called index.web.ts. So this is how we're going to get things to work. So create React app out of the box reads .web files first before it reads .ts files. So what that means is we can put all our web related code inside of these files, and this we can put all our native file code. And so create React app is going to read this file, whereas React Native is going to read this file. So we can switch them. So what that means is here I can say export from React router DOM, and here I'm going to say browser router as router. So this is me just exporting this import and renaming it at the same time. We're also going to be using the route and the switch component. So basically any component that we want to use from React Router DOM or React Router Native, we want to export here and import them from here. So you'll notice this is the DOM package, so this is the web version. We're going to come over to our index.ts file over here, and we're going to say browser router. We're going to replace this to React Router Native, and then replace that to the native router. You'll notice I named it router here and router here, so it's the exact same name. I want all the exports to match up. So you'll notice we're exporting three things: router, route, and switch, and they're matching. The only difference is this is coming from the native package, and this .web file is coming from the DOM package. So now what we're going to do is in our routes folder over here, our routes file over here, is we're just going to import from the router. So I'm going to say, get rid of all this code that we have here. We don't need this observer thing anymore. I'm going to say router, and you'll notice I'm importing this from /router. Now it automatically did index.web, but we're just going to say router like that because we want it to just get the index file here. And basically create React app is going to pick the .web version for us, so we don't even have to worry about this. All right, so inside a router, we're going to say route, we're going to say switch first, and we're going to wrap it. And switch, again, we want to make sure we're importing from this package. And then we're going to have a route in there. All right, so we're going to say exact path is going to be the /. This is the index or the first component that we want rendered. We're going to say component, and here we're going to pass in the workout history. And then we can create another route, which we can say current workout. And this is going to be at the path /current workout. And then we're going to import route, and that's coming from the router package as well. And so now we can go into our component, the workout. No, not that. We don't need the stores. It's going to be our modules, workout history. So here we are connecting to the root store, and we are saying changing the page here. So instead of doing the router store, we're going to remove that line of code. We are going to be using the history, and we can get the history from our props. And we need to add the type definition to our props to let TypeScript know that we are a route. So we're going to say route component props, and we're fine to import that from React Router. And so now, if we go like this, and I hit Control Space, it's going to know we have a history prop in there. So then I come down here and I say history.push, and then we're going to go to the /current workout screen. So I'll give that a save. So we can even delete our router store just to make sure we're not using it anywhere. And go to my root store, just get rid of it. There we go. So again, what we did here is because we have it as a route over here, right? We're passing this workout history component. That means it's going to pass down a prop to it called history. So this is a React router thing, and history allows us to change pages. So we change pages by pushing. And again, we just add this to our props, which we're passing in here. That way it just makes it so it's type definitions for it. And then lastly, just to recap the router thing that we did right here. So when we do create React app, or we read this in the browser, so we can see it rendering right here, it is using the router package, this import, React router DOM. And when it's using the one over here, it's when we run it in the app. So I'm going to say yarn watch, and now we can see this in action. All right, we'll refresh. Let's see, it looks like we got a little bit of an error. I'm just going to refresh. Let's see, looks like uncall exception. Looks like it had trouble loading it. I think what I need to do is in my routes, I think because I didn't say /index maybe, that could be causing it some trouble. Yeah, it looks like that was it. So it looks like we need to explicitly say /index on there just to be clear. And now we can see it's that, and when I click on this, you'll notice we are going to navigate the URL now. You'll notice that changed, and we're on this page, and we can see this page here. Now I notice we get this little thing in our invalid prop component, expected the type function but got an object. I'm assuming it's talking about our workout history here. We're wrapping it with an observer, and then we're passing that to the routes. So it doesn't look like it caused any problem. I guess it's just a warning. Not sure what's going on there. I don't know if it's just it looks like it's a prop type warning. I think we can safely ignore this. I don't know if there's a way to suppress this warning or anything. But it doesn't look like it's causing a problem. Anyway, this should work all the same now. The only difference is if I were to refresh the page, we're going to stay on this page. Now, we didn't really code this expecting we could go to this page, so you don't see any workout data, but we can fix that in the future. But now we can navigate to different pages like this, and it works like a website you would expect. So we can use React Router to easily switch because the APIs are so similar between the native and the other one. So I think this is a good choice when using React Native Web, is to use this because you can easily switch between the two. Also, one thing I wanted to mention real quick before I end the video is Create React App worked out of the box, but if you go to the docs for React Native Web, and I'll link this below, they show you a Webpack configuration so you can get this working. So you basically add to your Webpack, say that you want to accept the extension .web.js, or in our case .web.ts for TypeScript, and then it'll read these type of files. So we're going to be going over how you can persist your Mobx stores, and the reason why we want to do that is so we can keep track of the workouts a user has done. So for example, when I create a workout right now and I refresh the page, it just disappears. So I want to keep that data and keep the data as we store it in the history. So if you do several workouts, we have all that data. So when you come back to the website, we have that. And so the way we're going to be persisting this is in the website local storage and on the app async storage. Now there's a nice library that is going to help us out called Mobx Persist that we're going to be using. And the cool thing about this library is we can actually just pass in async storage to it. And it works out of the box with React Native. And the cool thing about React Native Web is it actually handles async storage. They re-implemented it. And so underneath the hood, they're going to use local storage and persist it like that on the web. So we don't actually have to do anything to get this to work with both the website and the app. We just use async storage here. So we're going to start off by installing this package. So I'm going to say yarn add Mobx Persist, and I'm installing it at this version. And the cool thing about this package as well is it's written in TypeScript, so we're going to get type safety out of it without having to install extra types. And I'm just going to run yarn watch on this. All right, so how it works is we are going to basically decorate the fields that we want to persist. So I currently have the workout timer store up. So here I'm going to say persist, and I'm going to just import that. It doesn't look like it's auto-completing, so we'll just write it ourselves. So Mobx persist. And so I'm going to just decorate the persist on all three of these fields. And then after we persist this, what we need to do, if we come look at the example here, is we then have to create a hydrate function, and then we just call hydrate on our store. So I'm going to copy hydrate, and you'll notice what we do is we create an instance of our store, and then we hydrate it. So I'm going to copy this hydrate, and where we're creating an instance of the workout timer store is in the root. So we're going to head over here. So I'm paste in hydrate here, and I'm just going to get rid of the comments, and it tells us if we're using async storage, we need to set this to true. So let's set that to true, and we're going to pass in async storage in here, and we're going to import create. This is coming from Mobx persist. So we've created this hydrate function, and then I'm just going to, in the constructor of the root store, call hydrate. And then we're going to pass in the key for how it's going to store it. So I'm going to call it workout timer. And then we're going to pass in the store itself. So this dot workout timer. And so we want to do the same thing for our workout store as well. So we can come over here, and I want to persist all these fields. So we're going to say at persist, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to do it for each one. And that and that. Cool. So if I go back to my root store now, I can come back over here, and we're going to give it another key. This I'm going to call just workout, and this is going to be this dot workout store. So basically what is happening here is in our constructor, when we create a new root store, it's going to hydrate both the workout timer store and the workout store. And what hydrate is doing is it's checking whether this is stored in local storage or async storage in our case. And if it is, it's going to hydrate it or put the field values into these two stores. And it's also going to listen, and it's going to save these values as they change over time. And if we want to, we can pass in, I believe, a debounce value to this. And you can see that right there. And debounce specifies how many milliseconds we want it to wait. So for example, if we want it to save on every update, that's the default. If we want to save every 10 milliseconds or so, we can debounce it at that. And so we could add that if we want to. I'm just going to leave it off for simplicity's sake. Next thing is, if we see if this works, we can come back over here. I think we should get an error out of the box. So if I come to my console over here, and you'll notice we have an uncaught exception. It says this value is not a primitive. So what that means is any of our fields that are not just a simple like number value or a string or something, we need to actually specify what the data type is. So what we can do is we can pass a parameter in here, and we need to specify what kind of object this is, or if it's a list, map, or an object. This is a list. The history is also a list. And then the other one is in our workout timer store. This day.js is an object. So we're going to say object there. Give that a save. Let this refresh, and you'll notice we don't get any more error there. So if now I create a workout, we can see that's here. And now if I were to refresh, it's going to save the values in local storage and read them. So now I can see that. And also as I make changes, so if I click on that, click on this here a couple times, I refresh, you'll notice our data is saved. So as we're working out, if we were to come back to the website, we'd have all that data saved. Now, one thing you may notice is the timer right here hasn't actually started again. So what we can do is we can head back over to our root store, and we can trigger the timer to start. So hydrate actually returns a promise, so we can wait for the promise to finish. At least, I mean, it's not showing a promise in the type definition here, but in their example, I believe they were doing .then on it. So we're going to do .then on it too. So on the workout timer, I can say after it's done hydrating, I can say this .workout timer store, and I'm going to just do an if statement. So if it's running, we're just going to kick it off by saying measure. Give that a save. So now when it's first started, if it should be running, then we just kick it off. And the cool thing about how we started this is we're saving the date it started. So if I were to refresh the page, it's not like the timer is going to reset because we're saving the date it was off by or started at. And again, we can click to reset it if we want to and start a new set like that. So that's pretty nifty. And the last thing I want to do is just show you guys where this is actually being stored. So if you go to the application tab and you click on local storage here and you click on localhost 3000, we can see here is our state. So you'll notice the key that we passed in here. That is actually the key for local storage. And you'll notice here the values all being stored, and we can see all the data being stored here. And it's also one of those things, if you wanted to clear out this, I could clear it out, refresh the page, and you'll notice it wrote it right away. So it wrote it pretty quick. If I refresh, it'll get rid of that. So that's how the data is being persisted. And again, we're using async storage. So this will work on both React Native and React Native Web because React Native Web implements this. So we're going to be building out this component right here today. So this is like a little card that tracks your history of workouts. So every time you complete a workout, it's going to show up on the home page as a little card like this. Now, before we actually create the card, we're going to just add a quick thing to the current workout page. We're going to create a little button right here that we can click on. And when we click on it, it's basically going to save the current workout to the history. And then we're basically just going to render that history as cards. So that's the game plan for today. So let's go ahead and start with that button that I mentioned. So we're going to pop on over to the current workout screen, and we're just going to add a button. And now I'm just going to add a button at the very bottom here. So it can go between the workout timer and everything else. And this is going to be a React Native button. And we can set the title. I'm just going to say save here, and I'm going to just say all caps for it. And looks like I just need to add an on press, and the error will go away. Cool. So we'll talk about what we're actually going to put in the on press in a second. Let's just see if the button shows up. Awesome, it does. So next in this on press, what we're going to do is we first want to basically put the current workout. If we look at our workout store, we have an array of current exercises. And so basically we want to store that in the workout history over here and given a particular day. And if we remember what this workout history is, we can look up here what we did. This is going to be a key, which is going to be the day and then the exercises that they did that day. And this value, someone recommended switching it so we have it formatted with the year up front. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. The workout history is basically equivalent to a current exercise, which has these properties. So we can go ahead and just say an array of current exercises is going to be the workout history. So I'm going to just move this down here. And so here, I'm going to say current workout or current exercise an array. So basically on a given day, someone did an array of current exercises is the idea. So we don't really need this anymore. This is common. It's not really representative of what we're doing. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this array and save it in the history at a current day. So that means we're going to say root store dot workout, and then here we're going to say history, and then here we're going to actually, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to say dot, or I guess in our case, a string. And so this is where we're going to actually say like a date like that. And then what we're going to set it equal to is the array of exercises. So root store dot workout store dot history, or sorry, dot current current exercises. There we are. And then basically this array here, we're just going to clear. So then we're going to set that to an empty array. And then after that, we're going to go to a different page. And again, I'm hard coding the date here, but we're going to deal with that in a second. And this, we're just going to go back to the home page after you save the workout. So I'm going to say history.push, push, and we're going to go to /, or just the slash, which is the home page. In history, we're going to get from the props here. So let's add the prop type here, or the TypeScript type. So we're going to say route component props, and then here we have access to that now. So let's see this in action. So if I save this, it looks like either something crashed or did not push to the state. Cannot set the property that of undefined. I hope that would make sense. So if we go back to our route store or workout store, we just actually never defined this. So I'm going to set the default value to an empty object like that. All right. Yes. So this is no longer a list. This is an object. All right. And cool. No more complaints. Hit save. Takes us back to this page. Awesome. So now if I were to go to that current workout screen directly, should be blank because we cleared out that array. Awesome. So I just hit back and then this is blank. That was weird. Okay, it's loading still now. Anyway, so the next thing is to actually format what the current day is. So we're going to be using day.js since we're already using that in this project, and they have a .format function that we're going to use, and then we can format into a specific date we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to say year, then the month, and then the day, and the day is going to be padded with a 0 too. So here, go back to our store or our current workout screen, and at the bottom here, instead of hard coding the date, we're going to get the current day here, and then we're going to say .format. And looks like that auto imported for me. For some reason it says require here though, so I'm just going to change that to from. There we are. All right, so we're going to say year, and here we're going to say month, then day. So give that a save. And then if I open up my application, I can see what the state of everything is. So here's the exercises that I did on this date. And I can create a workout, click on some days or some exercises, and hit save. So this is kind of odd. It was kind of like floating there. But when I move this, it's anchored at the bottom now. Interesting. So notice how this, when we scroll deeper in the page, this is always there. I think I might need to like change this to some kind of like anchoring it to the bottom always. I'm not sure exactly what CSS or style we're gonna have to apply to it to get that to fix, so we'll fix that in a future video. Anyway, let's give this a save, and now if we go to our application state, we should see a new day, which is today's current date for me, and we can see the exercises. So awesome. So next up is, now that we're actually saving stuff in the history, we want to display them here in card form. So first off, you'll notice that the card over there is kind of resembling the card here. So I figured we would abstract kind of the logic that we used. Well, not really logic, but the style that we used for the card here into its own component so we can reuse that. So I'm going to create a new file here, which I'm just going to call card. And this is going to say a React hook, though we're not really going to use any hooks in this particular component. And here we don't really need any particular props, at least right now, so I'm just going to leave them blank. And we're just going to render a view, and we're just going to render the children. So the children is a default prop that when we say react.fc, that it automatically adds for us. So this, and the reason why we are putting the children here is whenever we do card like that, and then say we have text like that, this is the children, so we're just making sure to actually render the children. So this view, we're going to steal the styles that we used over here. So I'm going to use my template for that, RNSS, paste in the card, and then here I'm going to say style is equal to styles.card. And now let's see if there's anything here that's very specific to what we were doing. I would say like the margin bottom here is kind of specific to it. And also, I guess the padding was sufficient, but the margin bottom is kind of specific to that particular component. So I'm going to remove the margin bottom here. And I'm going to come back to the workout card and we're going to remove it here. And instead we might just say like container, or I guess like card container, and that's going to have the margin bottom on it. So now here I can render this card, and you'll notice without the margin, I believe the cards will stick together. I think, yep, they'll stick together, so we can just wrap them with a card container, and that'll add the margin. So a view, and then we're going to say styles.cardContainer. Nice. All right. So now we're going to come back over here and we're going to use that card component to display over here. So we're going to say history card.tsx, and this is going to use that card that we just created. So we're going to say card here. And then what do we want inside of our card, right? So if we look at the thing over here, we're basically taking the day that this workout happened and then the current exercises that occurred there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say the day, which I'm going to just take as a string. So if they want to pass something else, like for example, ongoing in, they can. And then here we're going to take the current exercises. And we're going to say current exercise. And it looks like we didn't export it. So I'm just going to go to our workout store and export this type. And current exercise, and that's going to be an array. So we're going to have our day and our current exercises. Oh, you know what? Did I misspell? Yep, I misspelled it here. Exercises. Yep, that looks good. Actually, exercises with an S. There we go. I think that's right. Spelling's pretty hard though. All right, so inside of our card here, we're going to render those. Oops, there we are. So we're going to have text at the very top. And again, we're just going to render the day here. So we're going to do any kind of formatting on that, on the particular, and we could even just say like header is more generic of what we're really rendering here. They can pass whatever they want in. And then at the bottom here, well, let's actually first just import all this stuff. Import that, import our card. And then we're basically going to loop through the current exercises that the user did that day and basically give a prefix of that. So squat is SQ, bench press is BP. So I guess there's like a mapping of shorthand here. So like the exercise shorthand, and maybe we should put this in our store is this type. I'm not sure the best place to create this map, but we can say exercise short name. So here we can say squat is SQ. And if we take a look at our workout store, I forget what I was naming them. I think maybe in the workout history. All right, so I did a capital S. Is that, so we're going to say squat here. And this should really be a capital right there. All right, and let's see. I guess I can just write them out because I remember them. So we have deadlift. That's going to be DL. We're going to have bench press, BP, overhead press, and let's just make sure I name this what I think I named it. Oh, you know, we haven't even, oh, I did capital P on that as well. So let's make sure I match that. And I didn't actually, and maybe I should store this overhead press. Maybe I should store these values in some kind of enum or something. That way I'm using the exact same name everywhere, or put them in a constant variables, I mean. That would be better. Oh, I just, should be OHP. And then the last one is row. row. Purpose being that I just did this is just so we can have the little short acronyms for what we're going to display here. So let's map through the current exercises. And then for each exercise, we're going to render some text. And the key for this, since we're mapping, I don't think there's really anything unique about a particular exercise. I guess maybe the name we know is going to be unique. Because what I was thinking is maybe you could have the same name multiple times, but why don't we use that for the key? I think it's pretty safe. So here we'll say the exercise. So inside of here, the string that they were using was first the name. So we're going to use our exercise short name map, and then we're going to pass in the exercise itself. And I'm guessing it's going to get mad at us because it's not one of these keys. So I'm just going to say as any, or you know what? I think it actually wants us to say key of and type of exercise short name. There we go. So basically the reason why I had to do this particular notation, so this is a TypeScript thing. So basically we created a map right here, which it maps to squat maps here, deadlift maps here, bench maps here, right? And so if I hover over the type, you'll notice it says these are the only keys available. So I have to say, I can't just pass a string as the key. I have to pass a key of one of these things. So the way I can do that is I can say type of this, and then the key of means grab one of these. Now the other thing I could do is instead I could say this is an object which the key is a string and it maps to a string, and then I wouldn't have to do that. So either one would work, but notice I'm going to lose the auto completion. So if I were to say like exercise short name dot, I can't do dot squat. It's not going to know that that exists because I kind of removed that. I'm going to go with this approach because it types it the best, or it's the strictest. So okay, so I put a space, and then here is basically how much, how many sets they did and how many reps they did. So here we're going to say there's an X in the middle, and we're going to say c.sets by a number of reps. And this should be num sets. And I don't think I did num reps, I just did reps. And then lastly, the weight that they did it at. All right. Let's just see what this looks like now to get a gist of what's going on. And then we might need to style some of these things. And I think everything should be a single line, so I think this looks okay. So we'll go to our index. I guess our index is really workout history page. And I'm not going to worry about what we have here. I'm going to just put the button underneath. We're going to deal with the button in a different video. So here I'm going to say root store dot history dot map. So for each workout, oh, you know what? We can't map over the history because the history is a object. So I'm going to say object dot entries. So what object.entries does is it turns an object into an array, and this array has two values, or not two values, but the array, what it is each entry or each, or I guess item in the array is an array of itself, and we can destructure it. And the first is going to be the key, and the second is going to be the value. So value makes sense. The key in this case is going to be the date. Maybe we'll just say DT there. So here I'm going to say return, and then here I can say with the workout history, as we're looping through, we're going to just render a history card for each one. The key is going to be the day, so we can pass in DT there. And then here we can pass in I guess what else we need to pass in? We pass the props of oh, we just didn't import it maybe? No, we have the props passed in. It wasn't giving me auto completion, so I was just want to double check and make sure I didn't mess something up. That's usually like a cue that I did mess something up. All right, so header. Now the header is kind of interesting because basically we need to take this date and reformat it into something prettier. But I'm just going to display the date right now because the date here is just going to be a string, and that's fine for now. And then we can make it prettier in a second. And then the current exercises is going to be the value. Oops, go this way. All right, so here's our cards. So we'll notice the cards are taking the entire screen width. So I want to first, I guess, split them so there are 2 columns. So I'm thinking a for each loop in this case may be easier to create those rows instead of a mapping. So we're going to give that a try. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array here called const rows, and that's going to be an array. And really what this is an array of is JSX elements. And I guess it's an array of arrays. So we'll do it like that. And then we're going to say, copy this, dot for each. And then same thing here. This is still, we still have to do it in this manner where the first value is the date, second value is the value. I'm going to say rows.push. And I think what we're going to do is basically on even elements, so we need the index, we're going to push on to the array or create a new array, and on odd elements we're going to push on. There may be a simpler way to do this, but we're going to say if the current index mod 2 is equal to 0, we know it's even, and we're basically just going to say rows.push, and then here we're going to push on our item, which in this case is a history card. All right. And otherwise, if it's an odd element, all we're going to do is get the last item in the rows and append to it. So we're going to say else rows.length -1 dot push, and we're going to push on to that. And we're still going to create a history. So notice we're going to do this twice. So I'm going to just say, instead of doing it twice, I can say const history card and do that. So basically what we're doing is at the end, we're going to have an array that looks something like this. So we're going to have a history card and another history card, and we're just going to have pairs of 2 like that. Because basically, whenever we hit an even, we're going to push on a new array, and whenever it's odd, we're going to fill the array like that. All right, let's go ahead and now render our rows. So come down here. I'm going to say rows.map, and for each row, we basically are going to render a view, and then just put the other stuff inside of it like that. And the key here is going to be the index. So now we definitely need to create a style for this. So we're going to say RNSS row, and I guess the first row is going to be a flex direction, or first style I mean, it's a flex direction row. All right, so style styles.row. Give that a save. See what that looks like. And now we're getting much more of a row shaped, or at least we only have 2, so let's save a couple more. You know what? We're going to be saving this, and it's just going to be saving over the item. Yeah, see how we're just saving more items onto this, I guess? Do this again. Interesting. I guess maybe I just had multiple items on it. That's why I did that. I think the best way to do this, because I basically just want to fill this with some more items. So I basically kind of just want like a random date is the idea. So let's see. If I go to my workout history, is that where we're creating it? No, our current workout. So basically I just need a random date. I don't even know the best way to generate that. So I just looked up how we actually create random dates, and I found this nice Stack Overflow, and I'm basically just going to copy and paste this and just see if this works for the purposes of just generating some fake data for us. So I'm just going to paste that right inside of the day.js function, and let's start creating some fake dates. Awesome. So that looks like it does in fact work, and this is just some fake data for us so we can see some days being rendered. There's two big things that we're going to be doing in this video. The first big thing is fixing this row or this grid right here so it's not all mashed up together. And then secondly, we're going to make these clickable. And when we click on them, we're going to be taken to a new page where we can actually see the workout data for that day. And so to do that, we're going to be creating a new route, which takes some route params using a React router. But before we do either of those things, there's a small fix we need, and that is with the create workout screen. So you'll notice it is a long list of stuff, and if I click here to start the timer and start scrolling, this thing just randomly starts floating in the middle here. So we're going to fix that real quick. So if I come over to my current workout, what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap our button or everything in a scroll view besides the timer. So I'm going to say scroll view and wrap it all the way here. And so this is a React Native element that just makes things scrollable, and we'll immediately notice we have a scroll bar here now, and as we scroll, this is visible still. But you'll notice it's blocking the button at the bottom if we click on that. So we may want to add like just a little space at the bottom so it fits. So I guess if we go to content inset, is that that might be the right thing, but I was just planning on doing content container style and then setting it like a margin bottom, and like I don't remember how big we made it, like 50 or something, so that way it's pushed up a little bit and you can still see that there. So sweet. The other thing is you'll notice like there's a little bit of spacing right here because the scroll bar is we have some padding on the view and not in the scroll bar. So what I can do is say scroll view. I guess scroll container is a better name for it. And we're going to just move the padding to the scroll container. I'm also going to take the margin bottom and put that in here as well. And pass that to the content style. And that should have an R there. And you'll notice I'm using the content container style on the scroll view as opposed to the style. This is something to actually access the content or the view that is inside of the scroll view. So that is on purpose. And so now we have the scroll bar there. Cool. So all right, let's jump into the main thing we're going to do today. So the first thing was at this home page over here, fixing up the grid that we made. So someone mentioned possibly doing like CSS grid here. And I think this is like an excellent use case for CSS grid, but unfortunately React Native does not have CSS grid. All they have is Flexbox, so that's our only thing. Now there are some grid libraries, but basically they just wrap using Flexbox, so we're gonna have to deal with this ourselves. All right, so with that said, the first thing that I want to do is just wrap our, in workout history, wrap our cards in a view. And what I'm going to say here is I need to move the key since this is the outermost view, and we're going to create a new style for it. So styles dot, I guess we'll call this card container. And so what's going to be inside this card container is I'm going to say first off a flex of 1. So what that's going to do is it's going to have it expand across the whole half. So flex 1 on this one, flex 1 on this one, it's going to split it 50-50. Next thing, I'm just going to add some padding, say padding 10. That way they're a little spaced out and we can actually start seeing some cards forming. So nice. So this looks a little bit better. And then maybe we want to do something besides 2 because these are not that wide of cards. So we can go to our i%2 and we can increment this how many columns that we want. So in this case, let's do 3 columns and we have 3 of these. Now you'll notice that because we're using Flexbox, these are flexing all the remaining space. So here this is doing a 50-50 split here. So what we really need to do is kind of add some placeholders in this case. I think is the easiest way to solve this. So the way I'll usually do this is if we go to where we're rendering this row, I'm just going to check the length of the row. So if the length is less than 3 items, then we know we need to have an extra view. Otherwise, we can just render null. And so this view is just going to be a placeholder. So we're going to create a styles.placeholder. And we'll come back to our style up here. And first thing we're going to do is just say flex1 on it. And you'll notice that's going to have it there. And you know what? We're going to apply the same things as the card container. So instead of using placeholder, we can just reuse that style. But anyway, you'll notice that we'll at least push it over a little bit. And now to match the padding, we're going to have to use the same thing as card container and set a padding of 10 on it. But since it's a duplicate, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say styles.cardContainer and reuse that style. And now you'll notice we have basically there's an invisible placeholder right here that you can't see. If we set like a background color, you'd be able to see it. So like background color pink, right? You'd be able to see there's one right here. And let's use margin instead of padding. And it'll be even clearer. All right, and you can see here is our little pink placeholder there. Anyway, we can put that back. All right, so this is the gist of this. I also thought we could have a ton of workouts in the history, so I figured it'd be a good place to use a flat list. That's a component in React Native that is good for lists that are long. So we're gonna have to kind of think about how we have this current setup a little bit, because we can't in this particular format render the flat list well. So what I'm thinking is to reorganize this a tad. Instead of like making a rows of JSX, we're going to create a slightly new data type here. So I'm going to comment this out, and so what I'm going to do instead is our rows are going to be still a 2D array, but I'm now going to create a new data type here. Inside of it, I'm just going to say the date, which is going to be a string, and then I'm going to say exercises, which is just the array of current exercises. So this is kind of a similar data structure to what we had before, a 2D array, but now instead of having JSX, we're going to be rendering we're not rendering, but we're going to store objects. The objects have a date, which maps to this, and a value, which maps to these exercises. So to match it, the names, I'm just going to say date and exercises here. Exercises. There we go. I have trouble spelling that word. And then we're going to put this here, date exercises. And same thing goes here. And the reason why we're reformatting it like this is just a little bit easier of a data structure to pass into a flat list. All right, so we'll come down here, and I'm going to say flat list. So first thing that I'm going to do on this is pass in the data, which I'm going to have rows. And two things just hit me that I forgot to do. One, we may have to have 2 placeholders. If the length is only 1, then we're going to have to render 2 placeholders. So we can do it like this. So if the length is 2, this will be false and we'll only render 1 placeholder. But if we have 1, both of these are going to be true and it's going to render both. The other thing is I brought a tab up for it because I wanted to show you guys. On the scroll view that we made, we need to set this keyboard should persist taps. What this does is sometimes in scroll lists you have trouble tapping on things, and we want to tap on the items in that scroll list, so we can get around that problem by passing in always. And I'll link the docs if you want to see the other options you can pass to this. And this allows you to tap and have it work correctly. But anyway, back with the flat list, we're passing in our rows. And with a flat list, let's import this. And if you didn't see that, flat list coming from React Native itself. So there is a prop on here called key extractor. So what key extractor does is it takes one of the items. So in this case, I'm just going to say item. And if we look at what the item is, we can hover over it and see. You'll notice this is an array of dates/exercises. And we need to return a string that is a unique key. So I think what I want to use for the unique key is the dates. And I want something like, if I have 3 dates, I think I want to have something like this. So date 1, and then like a space, date 2, and date 3, all in a string. So we have an array, so I think a good way to take that array and turn it into a string is to use the reduce function. So we can say item.reduce. So this is an array function. The first parameter is a function that takes the previous value and the current value, and then we have to return something. And then the second value of this is our initial state, which in this case is an empty string. So how the reduce function works is it's going to call the function that you pass in for each item. And each item it's going to pass in for the current value, and then previous value is going to be either the initial value or whatever was returned before. So what that means is we're going to say previous value plus, put a space between it, the current value. So all that's going to do is it's going to make a string that looks like this, and it's going to append the 3 dates together. And then lastly, we need to render the item for this. And this is really what the row is going to look like. So we can copy what we have here, up here. And then this is going to be item is the key to access, and you'll see same thing as we were dealing with before. Now we don't have to actually pass a key to this because that's what key extractor does. All right, so we're going to keep this, and all we're going to do here is kind of a mix of what this and what we did up here. So I'm going to uncomment this and bring it down here. So to render this, all we did was loop through the exercises. So here I'm going to say item.map, and for each one we're going to render this. And so here I can say date and exercises. So the key is going to be a date, the header is going to be date as well, and this is going to be exercises. And we just need to import that. So we don't need this. We're going to need these 2 placeholder things here still, because this is we're still going to need placeholders because we're going to have odd numbers out or whatever. All right, so item and item. Give that a save. So I don't think we'll see anything different here. And let's see, did I mess something up pretty badly? I think this looks good here. We don't need this anymore. I think that could have been what's causing. Yeah, that looked like it was what's causing the problem. And this is that same 2 children with the same key, object, object, object. That's because I didn't say current value dot date. Okay. So current value is, if we hover over it, we can even see, is the object. It's the date, which is string, and the exercises we have access to. So we want to use the date to pin that. And then previous value, again, is whatever we have on there, and you can hover over it. You'll know it's just a string. It's going to be this, and then it's going to be whatever we return before it, as it kind of maps over each item. All right, so you'll notice it looks the exact same, but is now in a flat list, meaning it will work better with long lists of data. So last thing that I want to do is make these clickable. So, and basically take you to a new screen when you click on it. And I'm just going to get rid of this comment because it's not relevant anymore. Get rid of this as well. Okay. So to make these clickable, we can go over to our card, and we're going to take an optional prop called onPress. And we use the question mark to say it's question possibly undefined. And here we're going to say onPress. So if they pass in a onPress, we're going to use a touchable opacity instead of a regular view. That way it has a nice on-click. And we can still use the same styles.card. So it's going to look like a card, but now it's clickable. All right, so now in our workout history over here, I can pass an on press to this guy right here. Or actually, I guess because our history card underneath uses a card right here, so I guess it would work like that. So I guess I can just use the header, which is a date. I was just thinking in my head, I guess we want to pass the on press here. I think we want to add an on press here though. I was thinking whether we want to put the logic in the history card or move it up, and I think I want to move it up to put it here instead of putting the logic of how the changing of page works. So in that case, we're going to pass a prop down called on press. And we're going to pass that in here. So now in our workout history, we're going to define what on press does here. In this case, it's going to say history.push. And let's see if we have, yep, we have history imported. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to /workout/ and we're going to do the current date. So I'm going to go like this and make this a bracketed function. And so it lets me save and reformat it. So what I want is I would like to have the year here, then the month, then the day of the workout. So to do that, we have the date and it is separated by dashes. So I'm going to say date.split by the dash. And so here we're going to say parts.0 for the year, and then the month, and then the day. Sorry, this should be 1, this should be 2. Okay, so we haven't actually created that route, but we can go ahead and click on this, and it should take us to a different page, and it should have the slash on it, so something did not work. So I'm just going to see if this on press is getting called. Pressed. Alright, and it is not being called, so let's just go one deeper to the history card, this, and then our card, click on that. Oh, I forgot to pass on press to the touchable opacity here. Alright, so let's click on this. Should take us to 2018-11-18. 2018-11-18, awesome. So it's going to be actually really easy to render what goes here. So let's first create the route for it. So we're going to go over to our routes, create a new one here. I'm going to say /workout/year. And by the way, this is how you do variables in React Router. So this is a variable in the URL. The year, the month, and the day. And this is going to render the current workout component. So in our current workout now, we're going to take some things from the URL. So now to tell React Router that we have some things that we expect in the URL, we're going to say year string, month string, and day string. Now these may not be there if someone comes from the current workout. So if we go back, to our routes, you'll notice that we are rendering the current workout both on a route that looks like this and a route that looks like that. So it's possible that someone came here with no route params on there. So that's why I did undefined at the top here, because they can possibly be undefined. And so we can have access to those variables by saying match and then params. And then there's going to be a day, a month, and a year. And then here, now I'm just going to see if this throws an error. Okay, good. I didn't know if it was going to complain. I didn't know if it was going to complain because we're destructuring these and they're undefined on the current. Ooh, we didn't go to current workout /current workout. There we go. Okay, yeah, I didn't complain because the params are going to be undefined and we're destructuring them here, so I didn't know if it was going to be upset about that, but it looks like it's okay. So I'm going to make a variable is current workout. So we could rename this thing because this really is just the display for the workout. It may not be the current workout. So it's the current workout if there's not a year and there's not a month and there's not a day. And so basically how this works now is we're going to do a check here. So we're going to say is current workout. If it is, we're going to map through the current exercises. Otherwise, we're going to get the day in history. So we're going to say date key is equal to year dash month dash day. And then we're going to look this up in our history. So we're going to say root store dot workout store dot history, and then use the date key. And then we need to wrap this in parentheses. So we're going to pick whether we're doing the current exercise or pick the exercises at a given day, and we're going to map through those. So just to give you an idea, here's all the exercises on this day. Let's try this day, and we can see we have just these 3. So nice. The other thing is when I click on a workout, actually that's good. It should update automatically. I think really the only last thing is when we save. We can get rid of this random day. When we save the workout, we don't need to clear the current exercises if we're doing a day in history. So is current workout, we're going to do this logic. Else, we're going to just save the day in history. Actually, we don't even have to save it because it's automatically going to be updating it for us. So that's awesome. So only if we are working with a current workout do we need to actually save it in history. Otherwise, we're going to be directly mutating the history, I believe, and there's no need to actually update it. And so what I mean by directly mutating is when I hit this, right, 2, it's going to actually save this. And if I come back over here, which day was I even working on? Was it this one? Yeah, it's going to remember the 2 in history. And there's actually no need to hit save. It's going to save, just goes back pretty much. It's going to remember that day. So we can make changes to the days in history now, and we can see the values. All right, so that is all I wanted to cover in this video. We covered a ton. Quick recap is we went over fetching basically different workouts based on the date we have in the URL. And we use this to look up the key. And I can console log this date key. So all we do is we take that, and we can close this. We don't need that, right? So in this case, 1213, we look up that workout in our history object, and then we display those exercises that we know the user did. We even let the user update the days in history if they want to as well. We're going to start off by making a floating action button. Now those are those little things you see in the bottom right corner of applications, and you click on them. They usually are used to add things, and we're going to use that button to create workouts instead of putting that button all the way up here. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding workout progressions. Or what I mean by that is after you do a workout, you should increase the amount of work or the amount of weight you do the next workout. So we're going to go through how you can increase that, or basically create a workout plan. All right, so let's jump into the code for the floating action button. So to start off, we're going to create a new component in our UI here, which I'm going to abbreviate FAB for Fab floating action button. And I'm going to use our React hook snippet. And I'm going to say our style snippet as well. And here we're going to say Fab. And the first thing is we're going to have a touchable opacity. And the touchable opacity is just so we can click on it, and this will be the circle itself. And then inside of the circle, we're going to have some text. In our case, we're just going to have a plus sign. And then I'm just going to import that from React Native. So now I'm going to pass in the styles. So I'm going to say style.fab, and then here I'm going to say styles.text. So we'll create a text style as well. Now for the text, we'll start with that first because it's going to be pretty easy. For the most part, we're just going to say font size 18 or something like that. And then for the touchable opacity, we're going to do this in pieces. So I think the first thing we want to start with is getting it located on the screen. I'm going to give it like a width of 40, a height of 40, and then I'm going to say background color so we can see what it looks like. We'll just make it pink. And then we're going to do position absolute. And then I'm going to position it at the bottom 10 pixels away and from the right 10 pixels away. So let's take a look at what that looks like here. Oh, we need to actually render it. So let's go to our workout history and render it at the bottom. So let's say fab, render that and see what it looks like. All right, does not match. I think my dist here got messed up, so I'm just going to delete it and run yarn watch again to just recompile it and give it a refresh. Oh, you know what? I think when I do that, I'm gonna have to restart the client as well. All right, so what I expect for this is at the bottom, we should see like a little pink square. So there we go, cool. Now I notice it's not really 10 pixels from the bottom. And the reason for that is our view, that's the entire page, is not flexing. So I'm going to create a style for it to have it flex. So I'm going to say container flex 1. And then this outermost style, I'm going to say styles.container. So now this thing's going to be the entire page. And so this can be 10 pixels away from the bottom because we need that outer container to take up the whole page. All right, so and we can see we can click on it as well. Next thing is we want this to be circular. So we can use the same tactic as we did with the other circles and say border radius and half of the width / height, which in this case would be 20. So now we have a circle. And then really the last piece of this is to make it, I think we did in our card, is to add the shadow to it. So I'm going to copy these 3 properties or these 4 properties that we used in our card to give it the shadow. So shadow color and then some properties on the shadow. And now we have a pretty nice looking button there. The only other thing, and by the way, how this works is it kind of is floating above everything, right? So you can see it. It kind of, I don't know if we should have it so where it's kind of like over the scroll. So maybe we should push it to the right, like 20 pixels, and do 20 pixels off the bottom too. Be more like there. That might be better. Anyway, you'll notice the button's going to be floating over the content. All right. And then really the last thing is to like get this plus sign centered in the middle there. So we're going to say align items center, justify content center. All right, now we have our plus. Now the plus, to me, maybe this is just an optical illusion. Looks like it's not dead center. It might be to the left and right a little bit. So if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of margin on the text to the left and right to push it. So like margin left 2 pixels, margin bottom 2 pixels, and that'll kind of push it a little bit. And I think this looks a tad more centered in my opinion, but it could just be an optical illusion. All right, so basically this button here, we've now created a nice stylized one, and we can click on it. It's going to do what our create workout button does up there. So we can go ahead and remove that from our workout history. So let's see what that was doing. I'm going to just copy the on press for that button, and I'm going to put that in the on press of this. So we need to add an on press. That way this works. And we don't need this watch, man. I just had that on my clipboard. All right. And get rid of that. And we're going to now, in our props in the fab, say on press. and pass that to the opacity. So now what should happen is I click on this, it should take me to a workout page. Now we're going to work on that next, is what happens when that plus sign is pressed. So first off, we don't want to just push on exercises every single time. If they're already in the middle of a workout, we just can take them to the workout instead of creating a new workout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our workout store. And oh, by the way, you guys just saw me do something that might have been confusing what just happened. So I navigated to the workout store. The way I did that, I should explain that, is I hit Command, or I guess Control probably on Windows, and then I hovered over this variable, and I can click on it, and it'll tell me where it came from. So you notice I clicked it once, it took me to the root store, and I hit Command, click again on the workout store, and that's how I navigated to where the heck this came from. So that's another way I commonly navigate besides just using the folder tree here. All right, so yeah, so I'm going to add a computed property on this. So I'm going to say computed, and I'm just going to say has current workout. And this is going to be a Boolean. We're just going to return this dot current exercises dot length. And this is going to be a Boolean. So I'm going to cast it to a Boolean using the not sign twice, so that'll cast this number to a Boolean. So basically, if it's 0, it's going to be false. If it's larger than 0, it's going to be true. And all I'm doing is I'm checking if there's some values in current exercise. So now what I can do is if root store dot workout store dot has current workout, we want to do this, or I guess the opposite. So if there's not a workout. So what's going to happen is we're not going to push on exercises unless they're not in a workout currently. And so the way we know if they're not in a workout is if that's blank. So did I ruin something? Oh yes, I forgot to add the get property. So we're just going to add the get name to that, and then that'll allow us to access it like we are here, where we don't have to call it as a function. We can just access it as a field. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over here and hit save. That has a whole bunch of junk in it, but if I click on this, hit save, or if I just like go back, and you notice how I'm hitting plus every time, we're not adding a whole bunch of workouts. We're just looking at the same workout multiple times. So the next thing is I want to fix up what we're actually doing for the current workouts. So first off, we should be doing a different workout depending on what day it is. So the way we have it set up in our, let's go back to our store, is we have the current workout day, and I'm going to set some default values. So I'm going to say it's going to start as an A day. And the current squat weight, I'm going to say 45. And basically, you're going to just start with just the bar, which is 45 pounds. And then barbell row and both the deadlift are going to be kind of hard to start with just the bar. So we're going to say, hopefully they have like some bumper weights that are like 10 pounds or something. So we'll say 65 pounds you'll start with. Okay, so now with these values, this is what I'm going to increment, and the current squat value and all that stuff is what we're going to persist. And as the user is working out, we're going to increment these numbers. So the way we're going to do that is, first off, we're going to hinge on that day. So here I'm going to say root store dot workout store, and we're going to say last workout type, and we're just going to inverse it. So we're going to say, we're going to look at what the last workout day was. If it was A, then we're now going to do a B, and vice versa. So that should be B, that should be A. This way, so all this does is when we hit the plus, it's now going to toggle between A and B, because we're checking if it's A last time, then we now want it to be a B. This logic may need to happen somewhere else, or maybe I should reword this and say like what the current workout type is. So if the last workout was an A, the next one would be a B. No, this makes sense, I think. All right, so that's going to switch between the workout types. The next thing is to actually increment the weight and use that here. So instead of doing these weights, we're basically going to check what day it is and do a different condition. So again, I'm going to be hard coding this here for simplicity's sake, but ideally you should probably put this in some kind of array of exercises or whatnot, or maybe a condition of some sort. So we're going to say last workout type, if it was equal to B, that means today is an A day, and on A day you're going to do this set of exercises. Oh, and this stuff should go inside of there. All right, so we're going to say do these set of exercises. And we'll paste that in there. All right, so what we're going to use is the current values as well. So we're going to say root store dot workout store dot, and then we're going to grab all these current values. Current barbell, current bench, deadlift, squat, and overhead press. And I guess I'll move this outside of here. All right, so the name of it's squat, number of sets, and then the weight here is going to be the current squat weight, current bench press weight, and I'm going to just create a const empty sets, because we're going to basically reuse this in multiple places. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say dot empty sets, and what this is going to do is it's going to basically just create a new instance of this array. I don't know if we would have a problem with having the sets like references to the same array, so that's why I want to create a new array each time just to be safe. All right, and then down here we're going to say, actually deadlift is special, so we'll just hard code it like that. Current deadlift. And then at the bottom here, I'm basically going to just say, I'm going to increment each one by 2 pounds, or 2.5 pounds, I guess. So squat, 2.5, and then bench press, and then deadlift. So basically what's happening is we're going to do these exercises, and then we are going to increment the weight for next week when we do them. And then we're going to basically copy this and do the same thing, but with different exercises on the B day. So again, you can see where we kind of have some duplication of things, where it may be simpler to switch this out with some kind of looping. So we're going to be doing an overhead press and a barbell row, but we still do squat. So barbell row. Empty sets, and then here current barbell row. And then we're just rinsing and repeating overhead press here. And we're pretty much done, I think, now with this switching. So let's see what we just accomplished. So now when I hit a press on this, we'll get squat, bench, deadlift, and we'll see what poundage we're at. Let's save this. So now squat, overhead press, barbell, we're at these pounds. Save it. And if we look at what we're going to do next week, squat is, oh, you know what? It's 2.5 on each side, so that this should really be 5. That's how much I want to increment by. But you'll notice how the squat incremented there. And we got a new set of exercises. So now it's going to oscillate between these exercises each week. and we slowly increase the weight of them and whatnot. Anyway, guys, I think that is the end of us adding features to this application. In the next video, what I'm going to do is make sure the app works, the React Native one, and at least on the iOS emulator, and then also deploy this to Netlify. Now, there's a ton of things that we could add to this to make it better, and a ton of different features. So I hope this gave you a good introduction and how you can get started with this and a good starting framework. And I encourage you to start adding some features onto this to get an idea of how it might work, switch up the styles of things, and kind of make it your own workout application. Customize the different lifts and set it up if you work out to your routine. We're going to go over how we can deploy our React Native web application to Netlify. So this is the website, and to start off, we're going to be making 3 changes to the project for the purposes of getting this to work to deploy. The first is in our common package. In the package.json, we want to add a script called post install. So this is a special npm script that gets run after someone does a yarn install or an npm install. So basically what happens is when the yarn install is going to get run, it's also going to build the project. In this case, it's just going to generate the dist folder. So whenever this project is installed, the dist folder for common is going to be created. And the reason we want this is because we're going to be building the application on Netlify, and it's going to need to be able to access this dist folder. So it needs to be built. So that's how we're going to trigger it. Secondly, we're going to go to our web package, and we're going to be running the build command, and we need to add the cross-env skip preflight check to the beginning of it to get it to work, similar to how we did it for the beginning of start here. And the build command, basically what that does is it's going to take our React application here, and it's going to spit out a build folder with the basically compiled code or transpiled code that's minified and all that fun stuff. And then lastly, to get our routing to work on Netlify, since we are using React Router, in the public folder of our web package, we're going to have to create a special file called _redirects. So this is something that works with Netlify. And basically we're saying any time someone goes to a path, we want to redirect them to the index.html file. Basically all this does is it says allow React Router to do routing for us. All right, so those three, after you make those 3 changes, I went ahead and committed the code, and then I pushed it up to GitHub. Now, the branch that I'm working on, I called it prod. Let's just clear that. So I called it prod, and I committed and pushed up to this prod branch. Now, I said we're going to deploy to Netlify. I went ahead and I already created a Netlify account. I have a Netlify project that I created. You're going to want to do the same thing. I connected my GitHub repository, but you could do GitLab if you wanted to as well. After that, I chose the repository that I want to link it to, because basically what we're setting up here is whenever you push to the GitHub or GitLab repo, it's going to grab that code from Netlify, or Netlify is going to grab that code, is going to build it, and then it's going to deploy it. And then after you pick your repository, it's going to ask you for some build options. So these are the build options that you're going to want to do. Your build command is going to be the following. So basically, we're just going to run npm run build inside of the web package. So you just cd into the web package, and then you run npm run build. And then here we just specifying the directory where our compiled code is going to be, or the once it's built. In our case, it's going to be in packages/web/build. Now, another important thing is I went ahead and just said the latest version of yarn as a build variable. So I said yarn _version 1.13, and basically what this does is it tells Netlify to use this version of yarn. I just make sure to do that so it doesn't have any problem with the yarn workspaces. And I just grabbed that version off of the latest one that I have on my computer. All right, so after I did that, basically the site deploys, and that's pretty much it. You can go to the deploys log. You can see the ones that hopefully published. My first try, it failed, but you can see the logs. If you have any problems, you can go and see what error you have, and you can try fixing it. But after that, it's going to deploy your site. You can even give your site a name and set it to HTTPS if you want to. I can see my site here. React Native Web Workout is what I named it. So this is live in production. Anyone can access this, so if you want to, you can come access it too. And the data is all stored in local storage, so everyone's going to get a different version, and we can now do our workouts and whatnot and save them. Anyway, that is how you deploy it to Netlify with React Native Web. You'll notice it's not too much different from a React project. It's pretty much the exact same. The only difference is really stuff to deal with React Router and Yarn Workspaces. Now, I also mentioned that I'd check out the app, and I spent about an hour trying to get it working, but I just ran into basically the same symlink problem and just having problems with the dependencies. I'm not really sure the best way to set it up since we did React Native CLI. I'm not really familiar with how to get Yarn Workspaces working well with it. I've always used Expo before. So instead of just trying a ton more and more workarounds, I was kind of getting tired of trying it, especially because I saw that Facebook has made a little announcement about how they're going to tackle the symlinks problem and estimate about a month away. So this issue was created 2 days ago, it looks like. So about a month from now, symlinks should be working. So I was like, I don't even feel like trying to get symlinks workarounds. I'm just going to go ahead and forget about it and wait a month until this is complete. Anyway, if this video is, if you're watching this like a month from now, check the date. Symlinks may be working and you can try out the app using that. But for now, I'm not going to worry about it. We got the web version of it up and running, so I'm happy with that. And this is the one that I wanted to see the most anyway. Anyway, that is the end of this workout series. I hope you guys liked it. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.